20 minutes later, Lin Yu finished solving the questions. There were not many questions, only a dozen or so, and Lin Yu took about a minute to solve each one. Lin Yu had never seen such a strange question design before, so he found it very difficult. After finishing, Lin Yu took a deep breath, turned around and asked, "Li Ruochen, where did these questions come from? Why have I never seen them in the textbook? It's too difficult. This is not a mock college entrance examination paper that you got from some source, is it?" Li Ruochen took out the standard answers to the questions and compared them with Lin Yu's answers one by one. There were a total of 15 questions, and none of them were wrong. What's strange is that among the 15 physics questions, 11 of the solutions Lin Yu used were not standard solutions at all. The test time for these 15 questions was 2 days. In other words, as long as you solve the problem within 2 days, you will not exceed the time limit. But Lin Yu in front of him took more than 20 minutes. To be more precise, it was 23 minutes and 17 seconds. What level of genius is this? I can no longer be considered a top student. I have already surpassed the gods, and I am a learning immortal. And Li Ruochen was very sure that she had never brought the questions in her hand into the classroom. Even if she did, many students would not be able to solve any of them without any hints. It is impossible for the physics teacher to give Lin Yu these questions. Although Lin Yu is a favorite of teachers of other subjects, he is a difficult student in the eyes of his physics teacher. If the physics teacher hadn't thought that Lin Yu had a high IQ and was worth saving, he would have been classified as a poor student long ago. Although Lin Yu was poor at physics, he was very well educated and respected his teachers. It is impossible for the physics teacher to humiliate Lin Yu with questions of this level. Then, there is only one possibility. Lin Yu was hiding his abilities before, he must be worried about something. What is he worried about? What is there for him to worry about? Li Ruochen was a top student in science, and was good at analysis. She immediately found the key to the problem. Lin Yu was concerned about himself. He was the representative of the physics class. If Lin Yu performed too well in physics, it would definitely threaten his position. But why does he defend himself so much? The only explanation is, Lin Yu has a crush on me. After Li Ruochen did the self-pua, his face immediately blushed. The boy in front of him was as outstanding as the stars in the sky, and he actually loved her deeply. Li Ruochen entered the suspension bridge effect. The suspension bridge effect refers to a pair of men and women at the two ends of a suspension bridge. When they are crossing the suspension bridge, the shaking of the bridge causes their heartbeats to speed up, but they believe that this faster heartbeat is caused by the other's heartbeat. Of course, Lin Yu had no idea what Li Ruochen was thinking. He was still immersed in the current state of solving the problem, and in his heart he was still cursing the person who set the question as a pervert. Li Ruochen's originally cold face showed a rare hint of tenderness, and he whispered in Lin Yu's ear, "I plan to apply for Jiangnan University." After saying that, he quickly snatched the test paper from Lin Yu's hand, covered his face and left. If he stayed for one more second, there would be the risk of him confessing his feelings. Now that he had said it, with Lin Yu's intelligence, he naturally knew what he meant. Lin Yu was slightly stunned when his test paper was snatched away. He couldn't understand why the girl in front of him, who was fine just now, suddenly became angry. Also, she told herself, what did it mean for her to apply to Jiangnan University? Li Ruochen is the top student in the class, ranking in the top 3 and in the top 10 in the grade. There is basically no suspense about his admission to Jiangnan University. If you think higher, admission to Peking University or Tsinghua University is not impossible. If I don't have an epiphany in physics, I'll have to make another leap to get into Jiangnan University. But now, even if he could only exert 70% to 80% of his original strength, Jiangnan University would be as easy as taking candy from a sack. Jiangnan University is not my goal. It can also be said that all universities are not my goal. I just want to let those people in the Lin family who live in their own world see that Lin Yu is not as bad as you think. And Lin Tianyang? Haha, as the gravedigger of the Lin family, you must be good, guard against arrogance and impatience, and catch all the people of the Lin family in one fell swoop. so as not to disappoint my expectations and tolerance of you. Lin Xingnan never thought that one day she would get tired of the family atmosphere of the Lin family. Before, I always thought that the Lin family was a harmonious one, with a loving father and filial children, and a happy family. But all this, in my opinion, is so morbid and so artificial. But until now, she still believes that her transformation has nothing to do with Lin Yu. She just couldn't stand the morbid pampering of Lin Tianyang by everyone in the family. Although he had doted on Lin Tianyang like everyone else in the Lin family, after subconsciously comparing him with Lin Yu, he suddenly felt that it was unfair. Lin Xingnan was walking on the sidewalk of the East Suburbs Manor Villa district with her backpack on her back. She was about to call Xiao Zhao to ask him to pick her up when she heard Lin Shiyan's voice from behind. "For sister, I'll take you there." It was Lin Shiyan who drove the Cullinan and came behind Lin Xingnan. Among the 7 sisters in the Lin family, there are also differences in closeness. Xiao Lin Shiyan and Lin Xingnan are closer because of their similar personalities. Lin Xingnan took the military bag off her shoulder, opened the car door, threw the bag on the back seat, then opened the front door and sat in the passenger seat. The car started. Lin Xingnan didn't say anything. Lin Shiyan didn't know where Lin Xingnan was going, so he could only drive slowly and blindly on the road. A few minutes later, Lin Shiyan finally organized the words to comfort Lin Xingnan and advised. "Xingnan, I feel that you are wrong about what happened today." Lin Xingnan turned her head and looked out the window without saying anything. Lin Shiyan said, "Dad has been very busy, you know this. But he still found time to go to the city government several times and also had dinner with several leaders of the political and legal departments. He has taken care of everything that needs to be taken care of. Even if you can't get into the municipal bureau, you can't blame Dad, right? Besides, you are still young. If you perform well at the grassroots level, plus the status of our Lin family, you still have a great chance." Lin Xingnan turned around and said very coldly, "Second sister, do you also think that I am unhappy because I didn't get into the municipal bureau? Isn't it?" Lin Xingnan shook her head and said, "Do you feel that the current Lin family is a little abnormal?" Lin Shiyan was shocked and asked in confusion, "Which aspect are you talking about?" Lin Xingnan didn't want to dwell on this issue and said, "I never thought about joining the municipal bureau. I am a soldier and I like the grassroots. The grassroots can train people and is the most important part of one's resume. How could I directly bypass this and go to the municipal bureau? This is extremely detrimental to my future development in life." Lin Shiyan wanted to say something, but Lin Xingnan continued, "Please take me to the Four Seasons Hotel on Lungnan Road. Why are you staying in a motel? It's so embarrassing. Our Lin family has our own hotel, and it's a 4-star one. Even if you don't want to go to our own hotel, at least stay in a 1-star hotel." Lin Xingnan suddenly turned around, stared at Lin Shiyan with a sharp gaze and said, "Is it shameful for the Lin family to live in a motel? Then do you think it's shameful for Lin Yu to live in a basement? And he's been living there for 4 years?" Lin Shiyan was immediately asked. In her impression, isn't it natural that Lin Yu lives in the basement? Who makes him dirty all day long, eats loudly, and avoids people with his eyes? He is not like the Lin family at all. Compared with Lin Tianyang, he is simply a world of difference. How can you compare with Lin Yu? He is so uneducated, has unclean hands and feet, and is a voyeur. It is very polite to let him live in the basement. Besides, boys need to be poor and girls need to be rich. This is also a kind of training for him. If he can't persist in this, he is not worthy of being a member of our Lin family." Lin Xingnan suddenly felt that there was a gap between himself and Lin Shiyan. Strictly speaking, there was a gap between him and the entire Lin family. Whether it was knowledge or topics, they were no longer in the same dimension. Only when you leave the Lin family can you truly see the Lin family clearly. You can't see the mountain even if you are in the mountains. Since I can't say anything, it's better not to say anything." Lin Xingnan sighed and said, "Second sister, you are studying law, and you will also enter the public security system in the future. In our industry, what is the most important thing? It's a chain of evidence." Lin Xingnan continued, Personal testimony is not the main evidence. Although I also hate Lin Yu, what I pursue is justice. Only in the face of the truth can justice be obtained. Longnan Road is also in the eastern suburbs, just a few steps away from Lin's house. As he spoke, the car had already entered the underground parking lot of the All Seasons Hotel. After Lin Shiyan parked the car, he opened the door and got out of the car, then walked to the trunk, took out his luggage, and said to Lin Xingnan, "Xingnan, we sisters haven't had a good chat for a long time. I'll stay in the hotel with you and have a good chat." "Chat?" Lin Xingnan said noncommittally. "If you don't think it's embarrassing to stay at the G Hotel, just come." This sentence made Lin Shiyan also feel that there was a gap between Lin Xingnan and herself, and they were no longer good sisters who talked about everything. Although Lin Xingnan is from the Lin family, she is very independent. She consumes very rationally and rarely asks for money from her family. She is completely self-sufficient with her own salary. Although Lan Lin and Lin Yuan occasionally gave Lin Xingnan money, Lin Xingnan didn't spend any of it and saved it all regularly. In addition, Lin Xingnan owns shares in the Lin family and receives millions in dividends every year. She has not touched any of this money and has saved it all. This is completely different from other sisters. Lin Xingnan has no habit of showing off. Her years of military career have developed her frugal and self-disciplined living habits, and she will keep a distance from everyone. This habit was also brought into the Lin family. Originally, Lin Shiyan was rushing to pay the room fee, but Lin Xingnan, carrying his bag, only said one word behind him and stopped Lin Shiyan from grabbing the bill. "If you pay, I will leave immediately and find another hotel." Lin Shiyan never thought that his sister would be so alienated and at odds with him, which suddenly made Lin Shiyan unable to deal with her. Lin Shiyan froze at the front desk with his bank card in hand, while Lin Xingnan stepped forward to pay the room fee. "It's only a few dollars, why bother?" Lin Shiyan suddenly felt that the sister in front of him was very strange. After washing up, the two sisters sat on the bed. At first, Lin Shiyan talked about Lin Tianyang, saying that Lin Tianyang was very good and ranked in the top 10 in the entire grade. Qin Bei was basically stable. Also, Lin Tianyang is sensible, well-behaved and lovable. Lin Xingnan was non-committal. Now that we are talking about Lin Tianyang, as his background, it is inevitable to talk about Lin Yu again. You don't know what happened yesterday. You don't blame your parents for beating him. You just don't admit that you did something wrong. You are still stubborn. Let alone your parents, even my eldest sister and I wanted to beat him. Lin Xingnan said casually while scrolling through his mobile phone. So you are not used to it all of a sudden? After all, we have always been submissive before. Whenever we make a mistake, we will admit it immediately as long as we make a loud noise. You can't stand it when we suddenly become tough? That's not all. You can't even imagine in your wildest dreams what he would compare us to? Lin Xingnan raised his head slightly and asked. What? He compared us to oranges, you know? He compared our whole family to oranges. With a pop sound, Lin Xingnan laughed and asked curiously. What does this orange mean? Is it sweet? Is it sour? It sucks, Lin Shiyan said. He also told Tianyang that a rotten orange is not rotten, but a basket of rotten oranges is truly rotten. Is this what a Lin family member can say? Lin Shiyan asked anxiously. From the day he entered the Lin family's house, he never stopped for a day. He either stole things or secretly ruined a good family. The smoky atmosphere. Did we say anything to him? Did we give him less food and less clothing? We treated him like this, and he actually called us rotten. You didn't give him enough food, so he was severely malnourished. You didn't give him enough clothes, so you only bought him one set of clothes in the past 4 years. Lin Xingnan said angrily. I don't know whether you are dead or not, but I feel pretty bad about myself. Lin Shiyan looked at Lin Xingnan in astonishment, and said angrily. For sister, why are you talking to outsiders? We are a family. This sentence seemed like a thorn piercing Lin Xingnan's heart. She could have no feelings for Lin Yu, but she could not be unfair to Lin Yu. A soldier protects the peace of the country, and a police officer protects justice and fairness in the world. Lin Xingnan was silent. Since no one regarded Lin Yu as a family member, why did he want to get him back in the first place? Is it just for the sake of the Lin family's face? Lin Shuyan seemed to feel that this sentence was wrong, and said sophistry. I mean, he doesn't look like our family at all. A weak defense is worse than no defense at all. Lin Xingnan changed the subject and said, Do you still remember what he said yesterday? Why don't you remember? Lin Shuyan said angrily. I remember clearly that after my parents beat him, he asked me to draft a document to break away from the Lin family, and also asked me to go to the notary office to notarize it. I thought he was just scaring us, but who knew that after I drafted it, he actually signed it without hesitation. After signing, he walked up to Tianyang and said something like, Do you know why I helped you? Because if one orange is rotten, it is not rotten, but if a basket of oranges is rotten, it is really rotten. I am optimistic about you, Lin Xingnan said with lingering fear. You didn't see his expression at that time, his face was ferocious and his tone was sinister. After hearing this, Lin Xingnan quickly put down his phone and suddenly asked loudly, He really said that? Lin Shuyan didn't expect Lin Xingnan's reaction to be so big, and subconsciously said, This can still be a lie. My father, mother, and my sister who were present all heard it. Lin Xingnan realized that he had overreacted, so he changed his tone and asked, You didn't have any ideas at the beginning? What are your thoughts? I had the intention of strangling him at the time. I never imagined that at such a young age he could have such evil thoughts. If our Lin family is dead, what good will he do? Lin Xingnan got up from the bed, walked to the window, pulled down the curtains, looked at the starry sky outside and said, Second sister, I want to meet Lin Yu. You can accompany me to his school tomorrow. After Li Ruochen left, Zhang Shi walked into the classroom, smelling of sweat. The students around him covered their noses unabashedly, with expressions of disgust on their faces. Only Lin Yu remained calm. Zhang Shi smiled and said to Lin Yu, Lin Yu, have you noticed that Zhang Xiaoyu is interested in me? Zhang Xiaoyu is the chubby girl that Zhang Shi left Lin Yu to pursue. She is in class 4, with average academic performance, big eyes, and fair skin. If her body shape was not a hindrance, she could have an appearance of 80%. But now, giving her 60 points is a bit unconscionable. Lin Yu ignored Zhang Shi's flirtation. Although Zhang Shi didn't believe that his good days would end starting tomorrow, Lin Yu still thought that he was his desk mate and often bought breakfast for him. I want to try my best to stop it. Lin Yu put down the physics paper in his hand and asked earnestly, Fat man, what do you think of me? In order to highlight the key points, Lin Yu strengthened his tone. Are you a liar? Zhang Shi tried his best to open his little eyes and said with a serious face, Except for being poor and picky, there is nothing wrong with it. As for lying, stop making trouble. You are not a bad boy. I don't remember you lying to me. Then, Lin Yu emphasized his tone. Please believe me once and ask your parents to cancel tomorrow's wedding banquet. This is absolutely impossible. Zhang Shi replied without hesitation. Don't say I'm still young, they don't listen to me at all. Even if I become the boss, it's absolutely impossible to cancel. I've already paid a deposit, please the post has been posted, how could it be cancelled just by saying it was cancelled? Lin Yu stopped talking, he had tried his best. The first class in the morning was mathematics. Lin Yu was a master of mathematics and fell asleep on the table. The mathematics teacher was the head teacher, a 30-year-old spinster. Name Yuan Shangjie. She is not married at the age of 30 and has never found a boyfriend. Many people think that she is a lily. In fact, Lin Yu, who saw a corner of the future, knew that she was just waiting for her first love while studying abroad. It's a pity that he is a scumbag. After he could no longer stay abroad and came back, he pretended to be a successful person in front of Teacher Yuan. He was affectionate, and said that he had been abroad for so many years and could never forget Teacher Yuan in his heart. In fact, this grandson got AIDS from messing around outside. However, a woman in love is forcibly reduced to intelligence. Teacher Yuan thought that he had found true love and thought that his protection for so many years was worth it, so he threw himself into the arms of that scumbag without hesitation. As you can imagine, after being defrauded of all the money, she also contracted a disease. In order to squeeze her out, the scum even forced her to sell. As a result, she was caught in the act, ruined, expelled from school, and even lost her home, died tragically on the street. Teacher Yuan has become accustomed to Lin Yu sleeping in her class. Anyway, Lin Yu is not the only one who sleeps in class. The 7 or 8 students behind him sleep in almost every class. But Lin Yu sleeps differently. Because Teacher Yuan can no longer teach Lin Yu, and Lin Yu's mathematical talent has reached the entry-level of a mathematician. If you force Lin Yu to listen well in class, you will undoubtedly be humiliating yourself. Lin Yu slept on his stomach for a few minutes. Feeling that it was rude, he yawned, sat up straight, cheered up, and looked at the blackboard. Teacher Yuan saw Lin Yu looking at him with a look of curiosity, and suddenly felt a little nervous, a bit like being listened to by a school leader. In fact, what Lin Yu was thinking was that he was his class teacher after all, and this class teacher usually took good care of him. The sneakers on my feet were bought by Teacher Yuan. Lin Yu, who has been reborn, will never let Teacher Yuan go to destruction under his nose. After Teacher Yuan finished speaking, he subconsciously said to Lin Yu, "Lin Yu, what do you think about this question?" Although Yuan Xiangjie has just passed her 30s, her height, temperament, and appearance are both outstanding. It is said that many male teachers in number 16 middle school have pursued her, but she has not taken a liking to her. After all, first love is unforgettable. She knew that a genius student like Lin Yu would definitely soar to great heights if he could overcome his weakness in physics. In addition, Lin Yu had a gloomy but not decadent temperament, which attracted her a lot. Lin Yu looked at the math problem on the blackboard. To ordinary people, that problem was difficult, but in his eyes there were at least 5 ways to solve it. However, Lin Yu did not want to stand out. He knew that Teacher Yuan was just asking yourself politely does not mean you have to solve the problem yourself. Lin Yu shook his head and said, "I don't have any opinion. The teacher's solution is very novel and really opened my eyes." Teacher Yuan likes students with high emotional intelligence. Although Lin Yu is very poor and has never given her anything, Teacher Yuan still likes him very much. Lin Yu then said, "Teacher, I have an interesting question here. I would like to ask you after school. Do you have time after class?" Teacher Yuan looked at his favorite student with an eager look, which made him feel very comfortable. Clean, clear, without any distractions, only that kind of pure liking, or love. Teacher Yuan nodded and said, "Come to my office at 5:30 p.m. Soon, the morning classes ended, and when it was time for lunch, Lin Yu and a group of classmates rushed to the cafeteria. Number 16 Middle School is an ordinary high school, not a key middle school. The school cafeteria is contracted by the cousin of the principal. The food is hard to describe in a few words. There are basically 2 points, expensive and unpalatable. But for Lin Yu, it doesn't matter. He can't afford to eat the so-called meat dishes in the window anyway. But today was different. As soon as I entered the cafeteria, a girl with a ponytail waved at me. "Lin Yu here!" When I looked up, it was Li Ruochen, the physics class representative. The boys in the cafeteria saw their goddess and took the initiative to greet a boy, and suddenly there was grief everywhere. Li Ruochen's character is that of a school beauty, youthful, cold, and keeping people at a distance. When have you ever been so enthusiastic? Lin Yu walked towards Li Ruochen, sat down opposite Li Ruochen, and saw that Li Ruochen had already prepared chicken legs, fish fillets, and braised pork for him. Lin Yu frowned and asked, "Studently, let me make it clear first, we will eat our own food. You know my situation." Li Ruochen pulled Lin Yu to sit down and said with a smile, "I'm treating you today, thank you for solving those international physics competition questions for me." It was not until then that Lin Yu realized that the questions he had done in the morning were actually physics competition questions. He had accidentally reached the forefront of world youth physics. Li Ruochen picked up the chicken leg on the table and put it into Lin Yu's rice bowl. He smiled and said, "Lin Yu, what do you want to do after graduation?" "Yes, it's time to fill in the application form." Li Ruochun's goal is Jiangnan University, so what about me? It seems like I have never thought about what I want to do when I grow up. I don't have any plans for my life. My biggest wish in life before was to be accepted by the Lin family and to be loved by my parents and sisters like Lin Tianyang. But now, all of this feels ridiculous. Lin Tianyang hasn't even started college yet, but the Lin family has already made plans for his future. No matter how he performs in the exam, he will go to the United States. Lin Yuan has already donated $10 million to Princeton University and obtained a place to study abroad. This is the way the elite class educates their children. For many children from poor families, the end point of their lifelong hard work is just the starting point for others. Lin Yuan shook his head and said, "I just want to be a good person." Lin Yu's answer was regarded as Versailles by Li Ruochun. After all, with such talent, students like Lin Yu will be the ones that major colleges and universities compete for in the future. Thinking of this, Li Ruochun felt sad in his heart. I am afraid that Jiangnan University, which he always wanted, was not on Lin Yu's menu. But no matter what, if you are finally tempted once, you must at least try hard. Li Ruochun made up his mind to confess his love to Lin Yu before graduation. It would be so happy if Lin Yu confessed to him in advance. Li Ruochun said with a longing look on his face, "I want to go to Jiangnan Medical University and become a doctor in the future. It would be great if I could enter Lanlin Hospital. The treatment in their hospital is the best in Hangzhou. I heard that the director of Lanlin Hospital is also named Lin, and she is a beautiful woman. She was the same family as you 500 years ago. Lanlin Hospital is the property of the Lin family. The hospital is named after his parents' surnames. The director, Lin Xiaotong, is his eldest sister." Lin Yu said with disdain, "Ruochun, people still have to have some ideals, not just limited to the present. In my opinion, Lanlin Hospital is also average. After all, it is a furniture hospital. Although it follows the aristocratic route, it is risk-resistant. Poor ability. If we want to go to Kyoto Hospital, we should go to Kyoto Hospital. That is the place where we can best realize the value of life." When Li Ruochun heard Lin Yu calling him Ruochun, his heart beat wildly. He called me Ruochun, and he even left out his last name. He really likes me. In his frantic heart, he automatically ignored the disdain for Lanlin Hospital in Lin Yu's tone, and corrected him. "Lin Yu, you can't say that. My grades and talents are just like this. I can't count on the designation of Kyoto Hospital. In fact, Lanlin Hospital is also quite important in the country. Do you really have no plans for the future?" Li Ruochun looked at Lin Yu with eager eyes and asked, "How about you consider attending Jiangnan University with me?" This was already a veiled confession. After Li Ruochun finished saying this, his face turned red all the way to his neck. Lin Yu chewed the chicken drumstick that Li Ruochun gave him and said vaguely, "Jiangnan University is very good, but I don't know if I can get into it with my grades." After listening to this, Li Ruochun felt ecstatic in his heart and said softly, "As long as you perform at 70% of your normal level, Jiangnan University will be a sure winner." Just as Lin Yu was about to answer, the phone in his pocket suddenly vibrated. He subconsciously took out the phone and placed it on the table. Holding the chopsticks in one hand, he used the other hand to look at the red rice with numerous cracks on the screen. When Li Ruochun saw Lin Yu's cell phone with a broken screen and a very blurry screen, he believed more and more in the rumors among his classmates that the boy in front of him might really be an orphan, raised by his grandmother. What vibrated on the phone was a message reminder, not a text message or WeChat message, but a message from Weibo. When I clicked on it, I saw it was a Weibo message posted by Xian Chai. Obviously, after Lin Yu talked to Xuanji posted on Weibo. However, this Weibo is very long. I roughly estimated that it has thousands of words. This makes Lin Yu very curious. Isn't it just a simple prediction? A Weibo that can solve the problem in 20 words must be written in plain text, stretched into thousands of words. It seems that Xuanzai really doesn't understand the traffic password. In today's fast-paced society, who has time to sit down and read your long speech, unless you write a cool article? But when he looked carefully, Lin Yu was so shocked that he dropped the chopsticks in his right hand on the table. Weibo wrote, "Mysterious information. At 8:34 and 52 seconds p.m. on April 28th, there will be an explosion at the Sihai restaurant at number 38 Xiangqing Road. The intensity of the explosion is violent. The cause of the explosion, Dingqing Group is constructing nearby and destroys the natural gas pipeline on the ground, causing natural gas leak. Casualties: 37 people died on the spot, and another 8 seriously injured people died less than an hour after being sent to the hospital. The number of injured was 328, including 31 with third-degree burns. Building damage: the 3rd to 7th floors of Sihai restaurant were seriously damaged, with the 3rd to 5th floors severely collapsed. Property damage: 75.9645 million yuan. The following is the list of dead people: Lu Qianqian, female, 28 years old; Zhao Jin, male, 32 years old; Wang Huahua, female, 52 years old. Next is the list of injured persons: Ma Xiaoying, female, 41 years old, first-degree burns, open fracture of the right arm, multiple soft tissue contusions all over the body. Su Hongbing, male, 54 years old, fourth-degree burns, comminuted fracture of the right leg." Lin Yu read this paragraph with trembling hands. Where is this prediction? This is simply an accident analysis report. As a master, he wanted to be famous like crazy. He boasted so much that he could even tell the explosion time accurately to the second. There is also property damage, accurate to the dollar. How can such nonsense be made up? If you put it on a platform with high traffic, you will be directly charged with spreading rumors and causing trouble, disturbing social order, and picking quarrels and provoking trouble. If not, you may be imprisoned for 2 to 3 years. This is too eager for quick success. Can traffic flow so much? Although I am very poor, I don't want Xian Chai to get into trouble for spreading rumors. Money can be earned slowly, and I have many ways." The old monk was dancing on the tip of the knife. Lin Yu's face was pale and his hands were shaking, which frightened Li Ruochen. "Lin Yu." Li Ruochen tried to call Lin Yu. "Lin Yu, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Lin Yu said nothing, and beads of sweat as big as soybeans rolled down his pale face. Li Ruochen became anxious, stood up and shouted into the kitchen. "Today's chicken legs are poisonous. No one should eat them." Li Ruochen's voice finally woke up Lin Yu. Lin Yu looked at the countless classmates with food in their mouths and looked at Li Ruochen in confusion, and immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. Lin Yu stepped forward and covered Li Ruochen's mouth, and whispered, "My aunt, what are you talking about? Where did the poison come from? If this was reported to the dean, I don't know if he would be expelled. Anyway, he couldn't escape the demerit penalty. Dear students, don't listen to her nonsense. The chicken legs are very good. I just ate them. The chef is very good at it, and they are delicious. You can eat with confidence." Lin Yu nodded and bowed to the students around him and explained desperately. After explaining, he took Li Ruochen's little hand and ran outside the cafeteria. Li Ruochen breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that Lin Yu was okay, and then Lin Yu held his hand. Feeling the warmth coming from her hands, her face turned redder. The two of them ran wildly and entered the woods. Li Ruochen felt ecstatic and uneasy when he saw Lin Yu pulling him and walking further and further into the distance. She began to think about what would happen next. Lin Yu pulled Li Ruochen to a remote place where there was no one but countless toilet paper scattered on the ground. He stopped, let go of Li Ruochen's hand, and said urgently, "Ruochen, something happened at home, you go back to the classroom first. I'll call my master. If I can't get in touch, please ask for a leave. I want to go back." Li Ruochen's full expectations suddenly disappeared. But when she heard Lin Yu say something was wrong at home, she said with concern, "Is it you, master? Is there something wrong with your health?" Although she couldn't figure out what role the master Lin Yu mentioned played in his family, but judging from Lin Yu's nervous look, the master Lin Yu mentioned must be very important to Lin Yu. Lin Yu didn't have time to explain to Li Ruochen, so he quickly said, "It's not a physical problem. I can't explain it in a sentence or two. Let's leave it like this for now, Ruochen, thank you. After saying that, he turned around and started making phone calls. When Li Ruochen saw Lin Yu, who was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, he could only leave reluctantly. As he walked, he comforted Lin Yu. Lin Yu, there is no obstacle that you can't overcome. You must be strong. If there is anything you need, I can help you. Just say it. Lin Yu waved weakly to Li Ruochen, and Li Ruochen reluctantly left. The phone call was easy to make. It only rang 3 times before I heard Xianqi's unhurried voice. Are you okay? Lin Yu was almost going crazy with anxiety. Hearing that the other party didn't seem to have any sense of crisis, he felt a headache. He calmed down and said, Master, was it you who posted that Weibo just now? Xuanji was obviously taken aback. Didn't you ask me to post it? You said it would attract traffic. I would like to ask you, is this true or are you making it up? Lin Yu was speechless. Even if he was making it up, he just said that there was an old man selling melons in the east of the city. When it came to you, it became that there was an old cow in the east of the city who could talk. When it comes to spreading rumors, it has to be you, Master. Master, it's like this. It's true that I made this up. But I just wanted you to briefly mention it. I didn't expect you to write it in such detail. I'm afraid you will attract the attention of the Public Security Department, or will you? Please withdraw immediately, it will be troublesome if someone is taking advantage of it. Lin Yu didn't even know how to explain it. Just when he thought he had explained it clearly enough, Xianqi on the other side of the phone still said unhurriedly, Have you ever thought about a question? Lin Yu endured his temper and listened slowly. If I just mention it, if there really is an explosion there tomorrow night, what will happen if the higher-ups find out about it? Lin Yu was startled. He already somewhat understood what Xianqi wanted to express. Xuanzai said on Weibo today that there will be an explosion at Sihai Restaurant tomorrow, and indeed there will be an explosion tomorrow. This is no different from the demonstrations before terrorists carry out terrorist activities. Then it will not be a matter of spreading rumors, but a crime. Suspect. Lin Yu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that his master's IQ was still very high. Xuanji continued. Since it is spreading rumors or predictions, let's just make it more detailed. Even if there is an explosion tomorrow, others will only think that it is a coincidence. If there is no explosion, we will have nothing to lose. It's nonsense at best. But, Lin Yu said worriedly, Master, your rumor is too detailed. You even have the name and age of the injured person. If this thing really happens, we will have no traffic. If I don't say anything, I will be attacked by countless black fans. What I mean is that there must be a limit to spreading rumors. How could anyone create such a rumor in such detail, as if it were true? Xianqi suddenly gave a meaningful smile. How can you be sure that this is a rumor? Something, if you believe it, it exists. Hearing Xuanji start speaking Zen language again, Lin Yu was still worried and said, Master, even if it happens tomorrow and we happen to be right, this thing is a coincidence. However, this coincidence cannot be as big as that's what the Master said. Do you know that what you said is no longer a prediction beforehand, it is more detailed than a summary after the fact? Xianqi, who was on the other side of the phone, coughed violently. After the cough calmed down, he said, Don't worry, I know everything about you, Master. Lin Yu's heart clenched tightly because of the Master's cough, and he suddenly regretted his move. In fact, it is safer to find a shield to slowly hype up the situation. If the Master is sent to jail this time, it is unknown whether the Master's body can survive the prison sentence. Lin Yu thought for a while and said, Well, Master, since you want to be so detailed, you can post this information on my Weibo and delete the current Weibo. I am still a student anyway, so at most it's criticism and education. Before Lin Yu finished speaking, Xuanji quickly took over. This is what happened. Isn't it just a rumor? You go to school with peace of mind. The college entrance examination is about to take place. Are you? Boss, you must set an example for Jiueming and Jiuehui. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Lin Yu held the phone and was stunned for half a minute before walking to the classroom angrily. Because of this matter, Lin Yu was absent-minded all afternoon. Even when Zhang Xu was wandering in front of him, he no longer had the interest to remind him. Anyway, I have already reminded him. After finally getting through to the end of class, Lin Yu quickly walked out of the classroom and quickly checked Xuanji's Weibo. When he saw that there were less than 10 comments under Weibo, most of them were scolding Xuanji for being crazy. Lin Yu finally put down his doubts. Heart. After school, Lin Yu suddenly discovered a problem. He had no place to live. Originally, before entering the Lin family, Lin Yu was a boarder, but after entering the Lin family, Lin Yuan and Lan Lin refused to let Lin Yu board, saying that they were afraid of getting some bad habits outside, so they stayed there for 4 years. Basement career. Lin Yu put away his school bag and hung it on the side of the desk. In fact, at this time, all the new knowledge points had been taught, and everyone in school was just reviewing and doing exercises. After breaking through the barrier brought by physics, these reviews and exercises are basically dispensable for Lin Yu. After packing up, Lin Yu walked outside the school, looking for a place to live. After eating a bowl of Yangchun noodles at the door, Lin Yu walked under a bridge. He wanted to spend the night under the bridge and rent a house tomorrow. I was just lying under the bridge with my clothes on, and when I was about to fall asleep, I was attacked by mosquitoes. It was only mid-April, and the mosquitoes by the river were already raging. In desperation, Lin Yu walked out of the bridge while scratching the pimples on his head and face. After thinking about it, I decided to book a night at the internet cafe next to the school. It cost 20 yuan a night. All I had to do was show my student ID. After Lin Yu finished the formalities, he didn't even bother to turn on the computer, so he just lay on the sofa and fell asleep. After dawn, I turned on my computer and looked at Xuanji's Weibo. I was shocked to see that there were already thousands of people watching the Weibo that usually had less than 20 people. And there are countless people who are entering Xuanji's Weibo, and there are all kinds of messages on Weibo. Some advise that the mysterious medicine cannot be stopped. Some say Xian Qi just ran away from a mental hospital. Of course, there are also those who are doubtful. Zundu is fake? This does not seem to be a prank. Have you seen the name of the blogger on Weibo? His name is Xian Qi, and he looks like an expert no matter how you look at it. Others said, oops, my home lives at number 37 Xiangqing Road, and a construction team actually drove into Xiangqing Road this morning, as if they were doing some repairs. Then there was another comment that was very interesting. Zhao Jing, you can't be more manly. If you want to stop me from marrying Linger, you don't need to use this method of slandering me. It's better to just say that Linger is pregnant with your child, which will make you look more manly. If you have the guts, we'll meet at the wedding tomorrow and watch me kiss the woman you will never forget in front of countless people. Obviously, someone attending the wedding banquet tonight saw this Weibo. Things seemed to be getting serious. Lin Yu watched helplessly as the number of comments under the Weibo post increased by dozens per second, and his head began to hurt. Fortunately, when there were 700 or 800 comments, a person appeared and left a 3-word comment under the Weibo post, reported. Then countless people followed up, and dozens of comments were posted below, reported. Lin Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief and wrote 3 words under the comment below, reported. At this rate, this comment should be deleted in less than an hour, and serious accounts may even be punished. But I can't care about all that now. As long as the situation doesn't get out of control, I can delete the information however I want. Looking at the time in the lower right corner of the computer, it was already 7:35 in the morning of April 28th, which means that there were only less than 13 hours left until the Big Bang predicted by Xianzi. Lin Yu turned off the computer, walked to the internet cafe's store and bought the cheapest toothpaste, toothbrush, and a towel. The internet cafe's network manager was a hot little girl. When she saw the sleepy Lin Yu, she teased him. Handsome boy, do you want to sleep in my room? Sister is really caring. Lin Yu was too lazy to bother with this kind of social woman. Of course, we didn't dare to pay any attention to it. After all, places like internet cafes and billiard rooms around the school were controlled by the surrounding black forces. This yellow-haired little girl is obviously the girlfriend of some gangster boss. If your hormones are really taking over, you won't even have time to pull up your pants before the gangsters show up and beat you up, and then make you pay. After a quick wash, Lin Yu turned on his computer again and tried to log into Xiance's Weibo. He found that the message Xiance had sent had been deleted. He only deleted the message and did nothing else. It was probably because he saw as long as the information has not spread widely, there is no need to deal with it. Lin Yu finally put his mind at ease and left the internet cafe. On the way back to school, Lin Yu saw Li Ruochen again, but Li Ruochen was obviously in a low mood at this time. If you look closely, you can see tears in the corners of his eyes. The originally cold and beautiful Li Ruochen now looks a bit sad and beautiful, like a Korean drama. The heroine after her boyfriend was raped. Lin Yu was just about to step forward to say hello when he saw Zhang Shi walking over with breakfast. Zhang Shi obviously saw Lin Yu, but did not greet Lin Yu. Instead, he looked behind Lin Yu. Lin Yu turned around and looked behind him. Sure enough, Zhang Xiaoyu and her best friend were behind him. Zhang Shi carried breakfast and quickly walked past Lin Yu towards Zhang Xiaoyu. It was obvious that the breakfast in Zhang Shi's hand was prepared for the girl he liked. Just as Lin Yu was about to leave, he heard Zhang Shi shouting from afar. Lin Yu, your breakfast is in your desk. It's your favorite pancake. Lin Yu felt warm in his heart, because this was the only person who cared about him besides his master and his fellow junior brothers and sisters. Lin Yu really wanted to say Zhang Shi, but he didn't know whether the explosion tonight would really happen. After all, that was just a glimpse of the future after his death. There were not many classes in the morning, and even the physical education teacher rarely taught a physical education class. It was not until Lin Yu saw his homeroom teacher Yuan Shangjie that he remembered that he needed to talk to Yuan Shangjie. After class at noon, Lin Yu went to the cafeteria to eat and did not see Li Ruochen. Lin Yu thought Li Ruochen had gone out to eat. It was not until Li Ruochen did not come to class in the afternoon that Lin Yu felt something was wrong. Lin Yu tried hard to recall the glimpse of the future he had seen, and suddenly discovered that Li Ruochen had not appeared since today. In other words, something happened to Li Ruochen at some point this afternoon. This thought made Lin Yu a little upset. He had originally planned to go talk to teacher Yuan about her so-called foreign boyfriend after dinner, but he had to put it on hold. Lin Yu quickly walked to the girls' dormitory, where Li Ruochen was boarding. I asked the dormitory aunt, and she said she didn't see it. Lin Yu wanted to go to Li Ruochen's dormitory to look for him, but the dormitory aunt wouldn't let him. In desperation, Lin Yu could only walk in circles under the girls' dormitory. The dormitory aunt is not surprised at all. There are usually a lot of boys hanging around downstairs in the girls' dormitory when they have nothing to do. After waiting for more than an hour, Li Ruochen didn't come down. Finally, one of Li Ruochen's roommates asked and said that Li Ruochen had taken simple clothes out of the dormitory and seemed to have cried. Lin Yu didn't know where Li Ruochen lived or what his family background was like. Just when Lin Yu was considering whether to go to the teaching office to ask about Li Ruochen's family situation, Lin Yu saw Zhang Shi again. Zhang Shi was waiting for Zhang Xiaoyu downstairs in the girls' dormitory. When he saw Lin Yu, he asked strangely, Lin Yu, why are you here? In his eyes, Lin Yu, a good student, cannot have feelings for men and women, so he should be a learning machine. Lin Yu glanced at Zhang Shi, didn't bother to explain, and left. Next, Lin Yu searched all the places in the school where people could hide, but could not find any information related to Li Ruochen. In desperation, Lin Yu had no choice but to go out of school to look for him. After walking out of school, it was already 5 o'clock in the evening, and there were only more than 3 hours before the big explosion predicted by Xuanzai. Standing at the gate of the school, Lin Yu felt like he was drawing his sword and looking around at a loss. It was such a big place outside, where could he find a female classmate he was not familiar with? Lin Yu had Li Ruochen's mobile phone number, but Lin Yu called no less than 100 times without getting through. In desperation, Lin Yu could only wander around the school, hoping to encounter a miracle. As a result, I didn't encounter a miracle, but I met the yellow-haired little girl who was the network administrator. At this time, the little girl was carrying a baseball bat on her shoulder, followed by 2 gangsters who were as thin as a mantis, and was walking northward cursing. It looked like he was going to have a fight with someone. Because the distance was too far, Lin Yu couldn't hear clearly what the little girl was scolding. Lin Yu, who was looking for someone, originally didn't want to pay attention to this problem. The management of number 16 middle school was not strict, and students with good grades and those with poor grades were mixed together. It was common for many school bullies to join forces with outside gangsters to bully the school's classmates. There was also a big incident 2 years ago. Several female school bullies stopped a female classmate in the women's toilet, stripped her naked and beat her violently, forcing the female classmate to have sex. They also recorded the entire attack with a camera. As a result, the incident was revealed, and the school bullies who committed the abuse were not severely punished because of their family connections. The abused female classmate couldn't accept the outcome and committed suicide by jumping off the building. Later, the father of this female classmate, armed with a shotgun, entered the school and shot and killed 7 people, including the 5 girls who committed the violence, the vice principal who was shielding the perpetrators, and the girls' head teacher. The parent of a classmate committed murder and then committed suicide. This matter directly spread to the province, causing the then director of the Municipal Education Bureau to step down, along with more than a dozen grassroots officials. After this incident, the number of violent incidents in the school has been greatly reduced, and the only incidents have gone underground, and the place of violence has also been moved outside the school. After Lin Yu thought of this incident, he suddenly worried whether Li Ruochen had also been taken outside the school and violently raped. The little girl in front of him was obviously related to the dark forces in this area, so Lin Yu decided to follow the little girl and the 2 gangsters. After the little girl led the 2 gangsters away for half an hour, they arrived at an unfinished building area. Lin Yu followed unhurriedly. He finally heard what the little Taimei was cursing. It turned out that the little Taimei's man seemed to have taken a fancy to another woman. The little Taimei took her own pony. Catch the adulterer. This is obviously not Li Ruochen's drama, but it's already 5:40 and it's almost dark. Even if Lin Yu wants to go back and find Li Ruochen again, it's too late. He might as well follow along and find some gangsters to buy some information. After walking into the unfinished building area, the little girl walked to a room with a simple door, then kicked the simple door open and shouted, "Wang Ermao, come out here. If you dare to touch that shit today, I'll crush your eggs." This house was the guard's room in the unfinished building. As soon as the guard's room was opened, Lin Yu's heart beat wildly. He saw Li Ruochen, who was tied to the ground by Wu Huade. At this time, Li Ruochen was disheveled, and his student pants were torn, revealing his long, snow-white thighs. His originally cold face was bruised, and his eyes were filled with fear. Sitting next to Li Ruochen was a burly man with a tuft of yellow hair on his head, the rest of his body shaved, a fleshy face, a big gold chain and a big watch, and a low-quality cigar in his mouth. There were also 7 or 8 horse boys standing around. After seeing the door being kicked open, Ma Zai and the tuft of hair looked out the door. When he saw the person coming, Tuo Mao didn't panic at all. He blew out a puff of smoke and said fiercely to the little girl, "Lu Min, don't be ungrateful. I'm just playing with you. You still want to control me not to touch anything else. Woman? Dreaming!" The little girl should be called Lu Min, and the tuft of hair is the Wang Ermao in Lu Min's mouth. After Lu Min heard Wang Ermao's scolding, he said angrily, "Wang Ermao, you have grown up, haven't you? Don't forget how you got to where you are today. If I hadn't compensated King Kong for 10 consecutive nights, your hamstring has been severed a long time ago, and I don't know where it's rotted in the gutter now." Wang Ermao spat hard, his fat face turned red, and he cursed. "Don't bring this up to me. As long as I think of you being fucked in different ways by King Kong's son for more than 10 nights, I will feel nausea." Lin Yu watched the 2 people in the room yelling at each other, and leaned out to take a look at the situation inside the room. This bathroom was originally a warehouse, with an estimated area of 300 square meters. It was surrounded by discarded building materials and surrounded by 7 or 8 horses. In this situation, let alone go in to save people, with my size, even if 10 people came at once, they would still be the gourd boys who would save Grandpa and send them off one by one. Forget it, this girl is not familiar with me, so I can't take any risks. At most, I can help call the police. Lin Yu was very conflicted in his heart and wanted to turn around and leave. Then he remembered that in the cafeteria yesterday, this girl had served him chicken drumsticks and fried fish. If he left like this and waited for the police to come, Li Ruochen would probably be ruined or transferred to another place. Nowhere it went. Just when Lin Yu was hesitating, a fight broke out inside. Tai Mei Lu Min was extremely ferocious. Although the 2 mantis shrimps she brought were not very powerful, Lu Min herself was very brave. A woman who caught an adulterer should not be messed with. Just when there was chaos inside, Lin Yu walked into the room. After Li Ruochen saw Lin Yu tiptoeing on his hands and feet, he was so moved that he shed tears. Just when Lin Yu was still 7 or 8 meters away from Li Ruochen, the situation inside suddenly reversed. The originally brave traitor catching team met a real master. Standing next to Wang Ermao was a young man in Tang suit. This man turned out to be a trainer with 2 brushes. The man in Tang suit grabbed the baseball bat that was thrown at Wang Ermao, and then kicked Lu Min kicked over. Lu Min fell to the ground and fainted from the kick. The 2 mantis shrimps she brought were also knocked down by Wang Ermao's men. Lin Yu was the only outsider standing at the scene. Looking at the people around him who were watching eagerly, Lin Yu bit the bullet and shouted, "This is my classmate. I have already called the police. I advise you to let her go as soon as possible." When Wang Ermao saw Lin Yu, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but after hearing Lin Yu's threat, he didn't have the slightest fear. He smiled at Lin Yu and said, "Boy, you dared to snatch a woman from me before your hair is fully grown. You are still a bit young. Brothers, break his legs and throw him outside." Following Wang Ermao's order, the 2 men standing at the door immediately closed the simple door, and 2 other sturdy men walked towards Lin Yu. Looking at this posture, it seemed impossible to save the person, and he probably had to confess here. Lin Yu pretended to be shocked, but in fact he was waiting for an opportunity to escape. Although Lin Yu is a thin man, he is a good sprinter. He can run 100 meters in 11 seconds and over 20 seconds. He is the only student in the entire number 16 middle school who can run under 12 seconds. When Wang Ermao saw Lin Yu, he felt that his authority had been challenged. He grabbed Li Ruochen's hair on the ground, pointed at Lin Yu and said to Li Ruochen, "You dare to fall in love at such a young age? Now as long as you agree happily, just sleep with me, and I will let your lover go." Li Ruochen looked at Lin Yu with despair on his face. Lin Yu saw Wang Ermao violently beating Li Ruochen, and his inner sense of justice was awakened. He didn't care that he was still in jail, and shouted to Wang Ermao, "You are a grown man, how can you beat a girl? You have the guts to challenge me in a duel." Wang Ermao left Li Ruochen, stood up from the chair, looked at Lin Yu, who was less than 1.7 meters tall and weighed less than 50 kilograms, and said with a smile, "Boy, if you have the guts, I will help you today." After saying that, he drove away the 2 men, walked up to Lin Yu, and without any nonsense, kicked Lin Yu in the chest. Lin Yu was small but very flexible. After turning around to avoid it, he raised his knee and pushed it hard, hitting the key part of Wang Ermao's lower body. This time is not the time to talk about martial ethics and attack wherever the enemy is. Wang Ermao is a gangster who fights without any rules. He relies on brute force and uses both his hands and feet. He completely ignores his own flaws. Lin Yu seizes the opportunity and almost breaks his egg. Wang Ermao screamed, covered his crotch, took 3 or 4 steps back, grabbed a brick from behind, and shouted to the men around him, "Why are you still standing there in a daze? Beat me, and it will be mine to kill you." Several men immediately surrounded Lin Yu. Some were holding steel pipes, some were holding bricks, and some were holding wooden cubes. They all greeted Lin Yu's head. As long as someone knows the truth, these gangsters are unscrupulous. No matter how flexible Lin Yu was, he still couldn't survive the overwhelming attacks. He received a stick on his shoulder, his body swayed, and he received a brick on his head. Lin Yu's brain exploded with a bang, he could no longer stand and fell to the ground. Next, Everyone surrounded Lin Yu and kicked Lin Yu wildly with feet of various sizes. Seeing Lin Yu being knocked to the ground, Li Ruochen let out a sad cry. "Let him go, I will listen to you in everything. I will sleep with you tonight and go to work in the harem tomorrow." Lin Yu, who was lying on the ground, heard Li Ruochen's words and shouted loudly, "Wang Ermao, you green-haired turtle, if you dare to mess with my classmate, I will definitely make you die badly." This sentence completely angered Wang Ermao. At this time, Wang Ermao was slowly recovering from the pain in his balls. After hearing Lin Yu's threat, he picked up a steel pipe, walked to Lin Yu, separated the crowd, and the pipe hit Lin Yu on the head. Lin Yu had just been hit by a brick on his head, and now he was hit by a pipe. Blood was flowing from his head, and there was a sharp pain that almost made Lin Yu faint on the spot. But strangely, as the blood flowed from the top of his head, Lin Yu felt that his strength began to increase exponentially. At the same time, as the pain intensified, his flexibility and speed also increased exponentially. As if there was an emergency response in his body, Lin Yu used his right arm to protect his head and blocked Wang Ermao's second blow. He stood up from the ground with both feet and punched Wang Ermao in the chest. I originally wanted to hit him in the face, but Wang Ermao was nearly 1.8 meters tall and couldn't hit him, so I had to settle for the next best thing. Lin Yu didn't know how powerful he was with this punch, but Wang Ermao had a heart-wrenching realization. With one punch, Wang Ermao was sent flying up on the spot, as if hanging from wire. He flew back 5 or 6 meters and smashed into the building materials behind him. The weight of nearly 200 kilograms smashed the building materials under him to pieces, and the person fell into it. For a while dust flew up. The scene suddenly became quiet. Lin Yu, whose head and face were covered with blood, looked at his fist in disbelief, and then looked at Wang Ermao in the distance with only one foot exposed, stunned. The surrounding horses were also restrained by Lin Yu's punch, and those who were close couldn't help but take a few steps back. The Tang Suit Master, who was originally sitting, stood up from the bench with a look of shock when he saw Wang Ermao being beaten away. Lin Yu didn't want to fight. It was not his duty to eliminate gangs and evil. He just wanted to rescue his classmates. Seeing that he had suppressed everyone with his punch, Lin Yu immediately seized the opportunity and said, "I tell you, the police have been called. Even if you have a backup, no one can stop you from robbing students in broad daylight. If you have some sense, let my classmate go and pretend this didn't happen." The Tang Suit Master hadn't spoken yet. Wang Ermao, who was lying in the building materials, struggled and said, "Dream, kill them for me, cough cough." Wang Ermao was out of breath after saying these words, and felt a sharp pain like a needle in his chest. He must have broken his ribs. After hearing Wang Ermao's words, the surrounding horses surrounded Lin Yu again. Looking at this posture, Lin Yu knew that if these people were not completely defeated, he and Li Ruochen would definitely not be able to leave. At this time, Lin Yu could feel the explosive power in his body, as well as his supersensory ability, as if a martial arts master had opened up the Rin and Du second meridians. Lin Yu remembered what his master said: the world is fair, and if you gain, you will lose. On the contrary, if you lose, you will gain. At first, I thought this was just chicken soup to encourage people to struggle, but now it seems that it is not the same thing at all. This is an exchange, using one's own bleeding and pain in exchange for temporary strength and speed. It can be called a divine exchange. This may be the magical power that the old monk gained from teaching himself meditation since childhood. Lin Yu decided to take the initiative. After adjusting his breath, Lin Yu suddenly turned around and stared at the Ma Zi closest to him. It was this guy who made the first move and smashed his head with a brick. The horse boy was stared at by Lin Yu, and his anus tightened, feeling that he was being stared at by a ferocious beast, and he quickly covered his face with the brick in his hand. However, just as the hand moved less than 1 centimeter, I saw a blur in front of my eyes. A figure flashed past my eyes, and then with a pop, one of my comrades behind him was slapped away. One of his back teeth was bloodshot. It flew in front of him, and hit him on the nose at a very fast speed. Red blood immediately flowed from his nostrils. Lin Yu looked at the closest Ma Zi, but it was the Ma Zai farthest away who thought he was fine. So fast. The Tang suit master didn't even see clearly, and one of his men was knocked down. Unexpectedly, the thin monkey in front of him turned out to be a master. After Lin Yu defeated 4 horse boys one after another, he set his sights on the Tang suit master again. The Tang suit master was so stared at by Lin Yu that he subconsciously took 2 steps back. Then he saw a flash of a figure in front of him. When he lowered his head, he saw that Li Ruochen on the ground had disappeared. Lin Yu lifted Li Ruochen on his shoulders and rushed out of the room. The Tang suit master, who woke up, immediately realized that Lin Yu might have taken drugs similar to stimulants, which have a certain effect. The angry Tang suit master waved his hand and shouted, "Chase!" Li Ruochen was held on Lin Yu's shoulders and felt the surrounding scenery move backwards quickly. She knew that Lin Yu was a good sprinter, but she didn't expect that Lin Yu could run so fast. At this time, it was already dark outside. There were no street lights in this wilderness, so it was extremely dark. Lin Yu had just run less than 200 meters, with 7 or 8 vicious gangsters following behind him. Suddenly he saw a huge figure appearing in front of him. When he took a closer look, it turned out to be Zhang Shi. Without thinking about why Zhang Shi appeared here, Lin Yu quickly called out, "Fat man, run quickly!" Zhang Shigong saw 2 overlapping humanoid creatures in front of him and heard someone calling him. As soon as the voice reached his ears, he felt a gust of wind blowing past his eyes, and the figure flew past his eyes. Before he could recover, he saw 7 or 8 guys with various non-standard weapons rushing towards him. Zhang Shi quickly turned around and tried to escape, but before he could even move his legs, he was held down by someone, and then an overwhelming number of bricks, wooden cubes, and steel pipes fell on him. "There are also accomplices who are supporting me. Beat me up hard," the Tang suit master said fiercely. Zhang Shi looked confused and his head and face were covered in blood in less than 10 seconds. Lin Yu, who was about to escape, turned around and saw Fatty being beaten. He remembered the breakfast that Fatty brought for him every day. He felt that it was unjust to leave Fatty in the hands of bad people. In desperation, he had no choice but to leave Fatty in the hands of bad people. Li Ruochen put it down, quickly untied the rope from his body, and said, "Quickly leave, I'll go rescue Zhang Shi." But Li Ruochen stood still, his big eyes filled with tears, and choked with sobs. "I won't leave, I want to go and let's go together." Lin Yu didn't have time to say goodbye to Li Ruochen, so he left Li Ruochen and rushed towards Zhang Shi. When the Tang suit master saw Lin Yu leaving and returning, he had already opened his defensive posture and was ready to engage the enemy. Lin Yu's goal is really a Tang suit master, because he knows that the only person who can be beaten here is this person, and this person is still the core of the entire gangster team. As long as he is knocked down, he can escape immediately. The master of Tang suit had never seen a person move so fast, it was simply inhuman, and he quickly made a defensive posture like in Tang suit. Tang suit masters are masters of Tang hand, which is somewhat similar to the current Bejiquan, with moderate defense and powerful offense. But Lin Yu, who was running wildly, ignored the defense of the Tang suit master and did not use any moves. He ran all the way. The Tang suit master just blinked and Lin Yu was in front of him. Without any moves, just with his thin body, he knocked the Tang suit master who was in a defensive posture 2 or 3 meters away. Before he could regain his footing, Lin Yu's fist was in front of the Tang suit master. One bump and one punch, all in one go, the Tang suit master was punched in the face without even seeing the person clearly. In this punch, Lin Yu only used 30% of his strength. He was very afraid of killing someone with one punch. When you get to the court, the judge doesn't care whether you acted in self-defense or acted bravely. They will judge who is guilty based on the final injury and will directly fight you. With only 30% of the strength, the Tang suit master was still knocked back 5 to 6 meters and hit an old tree behind. Although the Tang suit master was still awake, his whole brain was buzzing, his eyes were seeing double images, and he would be unable to move for a while. After defeating the most powerful one among them, Lin Yu's confidence increased greatly. With 3 punches and 2 kicks, he knocked down the gangster who was still beating Zhang Shi. He pulled Zhang Shi up and ran away. Just when Lin Yu helped Zhang Shi up and left, Lin Yu heard a hoarse cry from behind. "Wait a minute!" Zhang Shi was inexplicably beaten with a bruised nose and swollen face. He held Lin Yu tightly with both hands, fearing that Lin Yu would escape without him. Lin Yu helped Zhang Shi turn around, and when he saw the Tang suit master struggling several times under the big tree without standing up, he immediately said viciously, "Do you still want to fight?" The master of Tang suit waved his hand feebly and gasped, "Little classmate, I really misjudged you. I didn't expect you to be such a master." The Tang suit master spit out a mouthful of blood and continued, "Unfortunately, it's useless. We may not be able to help you, but you can't always protect your female classmate." Lin Yu asked coldly, "What do you want to do?" The master of Tang's suit took a deep breath and continued, "Do you think we arrested your classmate because of your bestiality? Were you motivated by sexual desire? No. We are a gangster, not a brainless gangster. Her father owed us money and has already given her to us. We signed an agreement. Tomorrow, she has to go to work in the harem. You can save her for a while, but you can't save her forever. Our boss's name is Ming Hu. I don't know if you've heard of him. To tell you the truth, in the whole of Hangzhou, there are almost no people who can challenge Boss Ming. You'd better let this girl come with us today. If you really like her, she can give you her first night. But if there is no one in that harem tomorrow, this girl's father will have his legs broken. If she can't see anyone the day after tomorrow, her father's eyes will be gouged out." Lin Yu turned around and looked at Li Ruochen with questioning eyes. Li Ruochen nodded painfully. Lin Yu thought for a moment and said, "How much does her father owe you?" The Tang suit master wiped the blood from his mouth and said with a smile, 3 million. Li Ruochen said angrily, "Yesterday it was 1.2 million, how come it's 3 million today?" The Tang suit master forced a smile and said, "Little girl, you don't understand the rules of our casino. The 1.2 million is just the principal borrowed by your father from us. It has been half a year now, and your father didn't tell you that we have interest. Something? It seems he still has reservations." Lin Yu gritted his teeth and said, "I will repay her money. Take me to see your boss Ming Hu. I promise to repay the money within a month. During this month, you can't embarrass my classmates, and you can't impose any additional charges. Interest. You can call your boss now. My name is Lin Yu. I'm a student in Class 4, Grade 3, Number 16 Middle School. I won't run away." The master of Tang's suit finally stood up, stretched out his hand to Lin Yu, and said, "My name is Tang Xin, classmate Lin. If you encounter anything in society in the future, please report my name directly. Although I can't beat you, you're also a red stick in the harem, so people on the road will give me some face." Lin Yu didn't want to get too close to these underworld people, so he didn't shake Tang Xin's hand and said, "I'm just a student. I don't think I will encounter anything in society in the future. After this incident, we just don't know each other." Tang Xin retracted his hand and did not feel embarrassed. He smiled and said, "It's normal for little brothers to look down on us. In fact, I am also a college student, still from 985, majoring in Chinese. I also want to be a good person and honor my ancestors, but it's a pity. I won't say any more. Come to the harem tomorrow and I will help you introduce me. However, I suggest you put down the idea of using force. Although harem, among all the masters, no one is your opponent, but in this world, whoever has a big fist is not the most powerful. You know what I mean?" Of course Lin Yu understands that harem sells itself as an entertainment club, but in fact it is engaged in high-level pimping behind the scenes. And after several crackdowns on gangs and evil, they still remain standing. It can be seen that the boss is not an ordinary person, and these people must have guns in their hands. Lin Yu is not arrogant enough to think that he can compete with a gun. Tang Xin stretched his legs and feet, smiled at Lin Yu and said, "Thank you, little brother, for showing mercy. I, Tang Xin, am not an unscrupulous person. We are seeking money. Some conflicts are forced. Tang Sun looked at Li Ruochen again and said, "Girl, cherish your classmate. After all, there are not many boys in this world who dare to fight for you." After saying that, he left his contact number and left with his men. After hearing Tang Sen's words, Li Ruochen nodded vigorously, tears welling up in his eyes. Lin Yu supported Zhang Shi, who was still confused, and walked towards Li Ruochen. Seeing Li Ruochen standing still, he asked in confusion, "Ruochen, if you don't go back to school, are you going to spend the night here?" Li Ruochen couldn't control it any more and hugged Lin Yu, sobbing softly. Lin Yu held Zhang Shi with his right hand and could only pat Li Ruochen's back with his left hand to comfort him. "Don't be afraid, it's over. Leave the rest to me and I will help you handle it." Li Ruochen raised his pear-shaped face and whispered, "Lin Yu, I know your good intentions. You just want to use a delaying strategy. But it's useless. You don't know how powerful the way of the fox is." After saying that, he leaned into Lin Yu's ear and whispered softly, "Lin Yu, I will give it to you tonight. Even if I enter the harem tomorrow, I will not regret it." Lin Yu was stunned after hearing this. He was acting bravely and not taking advantage of others' danger. Lin Yu stretched out his left hand and wiped away the tears on Li Ruochen's face. This action was so gentle that Li Ruochen's heart trembled. Lin Yu also whispered back, "Classmate Ruochen, you are not the most unfortunate person in the world. At least you have classmates who care about you like us. The human world is not a pure land, everyone has his own suffering. I will never let you enter the harem." Li Ruochen raised his head, looked at Lin Yu with hooked eyes, and said, "Lin Yu, I know, you are actually harder than me. You haven't worn a new set of clothes or a new pair of shoes since the first year of high school, and you only have free meals. Add dried radish. I think you should be an orphan. With your grades, you will definitely be admitted to Qinbei in the future and have a bright future. But I am destined to become the victim of my bastard father." Lin Yu heard the implication from Li Ruochen's words. Li Ruochen didn't believe that he could get 3 million in 1 month. In order to dispel Li Ruochen's doubts, Lin Yu pointed to Zhang Shi beside him and said, "Don't forget, there is a boss's son with us. We kidnapped him and asked his parents to pay the ransom." Li Ruochen was amused by Lin Yu's words. The tears on his face were not yet dry, and he cried and laughed. "Lin Yu, it's already this time, stop joking, okay?" Zhang Shi seemed to have woken up a little. After hearing Lin Yu's words, he muttered, "You just tied me up. I guess my parents don't have time to save me. Apart from making money, when have they ever taken care of me? In their eyes, money is more important than me." Lin Yu sighed. He could feel Zhang Shi's loneliness, so he supported the two of them and walked towards the school. As soon as he reached a place with street lights, a Cullinan sped from behind. Lin Yu dragged 2 classmates, and subconsciously avoided it. Sitting in Cullinan were Lin Shiyan and Lin Xingnan. Originally not paying attention to the 3 people on the roadside, Lin Xingnan's sharp eyes saw that the man between the man and the woman looked very much like Lin Yu, and quickly asked Lin Shiyan to stop the car. After the car stopped, Lin Xingnan opened the door and got out. The 2 sisters originally wanted to see Lin Yu yesterday, but they went to number 27 middle school yesterday. They searched for a long time in number 27 middle school but could not find Lin Yu. Later, they called Long Lin and found out that Lin Yu had already entered high school, in number 16 middle school. But Lin Xingnan reported to the Qingdong branch in the afternoon, so the matter of seeing Lin Yu was postponed until tonight. When Lin Yu saw the Cullinan, he knew it was Lin Shiyan. He was so impressed by this car. "I remember that when I first arrived at Lin's house, I sneaked into the car a few times. Lin Shiyan made me stand for a long time and was not allowed to eat. She warned myself that if he dared to touch her car in the future, he would be sent to the countryside." When Lin Yu saw Lin Xingnan getting out of the car, he sighed inwardly. Li Ruochen was shocked when she saw this Cullinan worth tens of millions. She thought Minghu had sent someone to arrest her. When he saw a beautiful woman getting out of the car, he breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Shi's eyes widened when he saw Lin Xingnan walking out of the car. He was over 1.7 meters tall, with a proud figure, straight, slender and elastic thighs. A beauty of this level, in number 16 middle school, even the school belle not comparable. What surprised Zhang Shi even more was that another beautiful woman in professional attire got out of the car. The same proud figure, except for a slightly softer temperament, almost the same beauty. After Lin Xingnan saw Lin Yu, he opened his mouth and was about to speak. Lin Shiyan saw Lin Yu covered with injuries and said with disgust, "Lin Yu, can't you just calm down? The college entrance examination is about to take place in 3 months. At least you should go to a technical school. Look at you. How do you look like a student? You hang around and fight outside all day long. I've been teaching you for 4 years, but I still haven't corrected you. You really can't stand up to the wall." Li Ruochen was originally a little curious about the woman in front of him, but Lin Shiyan came up and scolded Lin Yu indiscriminately. Li Ruochen became angry and retorted, "Sister, which one of your eyes saw Lin Yu fighting? He was fighting for Save Me and classmate Zhang for their injuries. Also, why do you say that Lin Yu can only go to a technical school? Let me tell you, as long as Lin Yu is willing, he can go to whichever university he wants in the country." Only then did Li Shiyan notice the tall girl next to Lin Yu. The girl's face is still childlike, youthful and cool in temperament. Even though I was wearing famous brands, I still felt like I couldn't suppress the girl in front of me. Lin Yu stopped Li Ruochen from continuing his attack and said to Lin Shiyan, "Ms. Lin, I got into fights and I went to a technical school. What does that have to do with you? Have you forgotten the agreement you signed with your own hands? If you came to see me laugh and humiliate me, I am standing here now and you can humiliate me. If you are here to ask for a debt, I'm sorry, but I don't have it now. But I promise that I will pay you back within a month, and I will pay you the interest rate of the loan shark, okay?" Lin Shiyan's face turned red after being choked by Lin Yu. Just as he was about to step forward to argue, Lin Xingnan stretched out his hand to stop him. Lin Xingnan looked at his younger brother who looked very similar to him, with complicated emotions, and asked, "Lin Yu, are you okay?" Lin Yu replied with the same complicated emotions. "For Ms. Lin, how am I? It seems that I have nothing to do with you anymore. If nothing happens, please leave. I'm going back to school. Remember, don't come to me next time. A low-end place like our number 16 middle school will dirty your feet." After saying that, he picked up Li Ruochen and Zhang Shi and left. Lin Shiyan was irritated by Lin Yu's indifference, and said loudly, "Is this your attitude when talking to your sister? Didn't your monk father teach you basic etiquette? Do you know what respect is?" When Lin Yu heard Lin Shiyan's words, he immediately became furious. "Ms. Lin, please pay attention to your words. I have no etiquette and no education, but you can't attack my master. My master raised me until I was 12 years old. Is it bothering you? Also, you said respect, do you deserve it?" Zhang Shi and Li Ruochen were shocked when they heard Lin Shiyan's words. Zhang Shi asked Lin Yu cautiously, "She said she was your sister? Which sister?" "My biological sister, the kind who are related by blood." "She used to be," Lin Yu said angrily. Li Ruochen opened his eyes wide and said in disbelief, "She is your sister? Are you kidding me? You see, every piece of clothing she wears costs tens of thousands, but you ate dried radish in school for 2 years? Did you break a law of heaven or did you and your sister have a grudge against your father?" Li Ruochen's words deeply stimulated Lin Xingnan. "Lin, you actually ate dried radish in school for 2 years? Not to mention my sister's, any nail polish costs thousands. Even if Lin Tianyang's sneakers cost tens of thousands, look at Lin Yu's clothes. He didn't know how long he had worn them, but he still had patches on his elbows. Is this what my mother said about a bowl of water? Is this what is called for boys to be raised poor? So, why is Lin Tianyang not poor? Lin Yuan is 1.82 meters tall, Lan Lin is 1.68 meters tall, and none of his 7 sisters is lower than 1.65 meters tall. But the boy in front of him is only less than 1.7 meters tall and weighs less than 100 kilograms. Lin Xingnan, who regards fairness as his life value, feels a little stinging in his heart. "Lin Yu," Lin Xingnan asked cautiously, "what did you say when you left home the day before yesterday? Is it true? Did you really eat Mom's dog? Did you really steal Tianyang's watch? Lin Xingnan wanted to continue, but was interrupted by Lin Yu. Is this important? You are a policeman and a lawyer, how can you not investigate on your own? Yes, I did it all. Does Officer Lin want to arrest me? Come on, hurry up, I have something else to do. After saying that, Lin Yu stretched out his hands in front of Lin Xingnan. When Li Ruochen saw Lin Yu stretching out his hands, he quickly stepped forward, protected Lin Yu behind him, and said loudly, Lin Yu steals watches? Eats your dog? Are you kidding? If Lin Yu could steal things, would he live like a beggar? As for eating dogs? Li Ruochen sneered and said, Don't you know that Lin Yu is allergic to dog hair? Li Ruochen's words were like thunder, exploding in the ears of Lin Xingnan and Lin Shiyan. Time seemed to pause for a few seconds, and Lin Shiyan stammered. You said, Lin Yu is allergic to dog hair? Why didn't I know? Aren't you his sister? Li Ruochen said angrily. You don't even know that your brother is allergic to dog hair? You don't usually live together? You only get together when you need this brother? Lin Xingnan suddenly remembered something. Just when Lan Lin brought the coke home, Lin Yu suddenly developed measles, covering his head and face. At that time, Lan Lin also disliked him for bringing the skin disease from school to his home, saying that if Tianyang was infected, he would not be spared. In such a serious situation, no one took him to the hospital. Everyone thought it was normal. But usually, even if Lin Tianyang gets a cut on his hand, his family will feel as if they are facing a formidable enemy, taking pictures and suffering from tetanus. Lin Yu stayed alone in the basement for 3 or 4 days without going to school. From then on, when Lin Yu saw coke, he stayed away. And all of this turned out to be an allergy to dog hair. What's funny is that his family didn't even know it. Lin Xingnan grabbed Lin Yu's hand. She saw that Lin Yu's hands were covered with calluses, which were completely different from Lin Tianyang's white, tender, and smooth hands. God, what have everyone in the Lin family done to Lin Yu in these years? Li Ruochen saw Lin Xingnan snatching Lin Yu's hand, thinking that Lin Xingnan was going to catch him, so he pushed Lin Xingnan hard and threatened. Are you police just here to embarrass us common people? The way of the fox, you don't care about opening casinos, lending money at high interest rates, and forcing girls into prostitution. Do you care about us common people? Let me tell you, if you dare to arrest Lin Yu today, I will sell myself and go to Kyoto to sue you, malpractice for personal gain and abuse of power. Lin Xingnan staggered, put down Lin Yu's hands, covered his face, and tears flowed from his fingers. Lin Yu quickly pulled Li Ruochen behind him and said, Officer Lin! It's just a gentle push, you can't do it, can you? What's the matter? Want to touch porcelain? Another crime of assaulting a police officer? Let me tell you, even though you are a policeman, you can't cover the sky with one hand. All 3 of us have seen it. This push will not do you any harm at all. Who are you crying for? Have you, the Lin family, fallen so low that you rely on blackmailing people to make a living? Zhang Shi, whose eyes were beaten to a slit, still didn't believe that Lin Shiyan, who was driving a Cullinan and wearing clothes worth hundreds of thousands, was Lin Yu's sister. He quickly stepped forward and asked, 2 beauties, have you recognized the wrong person? Lin Yu has been at the same table with me for 2 years, and I know his situation. He usually doesn't even want to buy breakfast. Look at the shoes on his feet. They were bought for him by the head teacher. The clothes he is wearing were bought by several of our classmates together. How could he be your brother? There may be some misunderstanding here. Lin Yu is a good student. He is very popular in school and never causes trouble. The teachers like him very much. He even won a scholarship. How is it possible to steal someone's watch from your family? It's even more impossible to steal a dog. Lin Yu is an orphan. He was raised by his grandmother. You must be mistaken. Zhang Shi's words were like a sharp knife, piercing Lin Xingnan's heart, the kind that was inserted and pulled out repeatedly. Lin Xingnan's heart had been poked into a sieve, and she no longer had the courage to stand in front of Lin Yu. Lin Xingnan covered his face with his hands and left Lin Yu and others crying. Seeing Lin Xingnan leaving in tears, Lin Shiyan shouted from behind. For a sister, where are you going? Wait for me. After saying that, he glanced at Lin Yu, turned around and got into the car, then started the car and chased Lin Xingnan. After the car caught up with Lin Xingnan, Lin Shiyan shouted several times, but Lin Xingnan didn't even get in the car. He ran faster and faster while crying. Soon, one person and one car disappeared from the sight of the three of them. When Jiang Shi saw what he said, he told Lin Xingnan that he had run away. He spat out bloody spit and asked, Lin Yu, did I say something wrong? They are really your sisters? It doesn't look like that. They are so rich. Lin Yu did not answer Jiang Shi, but quickly took out his mobile phone and looked at it. At 8:05, it was more than half an hour before the explosion time predicted by Xuanzai was 8.34 minutes and 52 seconds. Lin Yu glanced at Jiang Shi and said anxiously, Fat man, do you believe me? Jiang Shi was still confused and said, What are you saying? You are my brother. If I don't believe it, who do you believe? Okay, give me your father's mobile phone number. What? Don't ask too many questions and tell me quickly. Jiang Shi reported a series of numbers, and Lin Yu pressed the keys one by one, about to press the dial button. Suddenly he turned around and asked, Your father's surname is Zhang? Jiang Shi nodded and said, My name is Zhang Hongqi. What do you want to do? It's too late to become a helper now. Lin Yu pressed the dial button. No one answered until the dial tone finished. Jiang Shi explained on the side. My dad must be very busy today, so the phone may not be around. Lin Yu pressed the dial button again, praying secretly in his heart. Hurry up, I will save your life. The dial tone still rang and no one answered. Lin Yu was very patient and continued to dial. Finally, on the fourth dial, the other party answered the phone. At this time, Lin Yu was sweating profusely and said quickly, Boss Zhang, are you Jiang Shi's father? There was a lot of noise on the other side, and a panting man said, I am. Who are you? It's like this. Your son was in a car accident. It was quite serious. His entire lower body was missing. He is clamoring to see you. Come over quickly. Remember, his mother is coming with him. There was a pop sound from the opposite side, as if a wine bottle fell to the ground and broke. Then came the urgent question. Where? Lin Yu reported their address. After putting down the phone, Lin Yu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Jiang Shi's parents should not die. Jiang Shi heard Lin Yu say that he had been in a car accident and asked in confusion, Why are you cursing me? Lin Yu didn't speak, but sat down on the curb. When Li Ruochen saw Lin Yu sitting down, he also sat next to Lin Yu obediently and asked cautiously, Lin Yu, do you know anything? Lin Yu didn't answer. He looked at the time on his phone, which was 8.12 minutes and 43 seconds. I hope Jiang Shi's parents can get out of the explosion range. Lin Yu was worried, but on the contrary, Jiang Shi looked indifferent. It didn't matter that he was beaten in the mouth and his words leaked, and it didn't matter that Lin Yu said that he was hit so hard that his lower body was gone. He didn't even ask why he was beaten. How great was this feeling? In just 10 minutes, Jiang Shi sat on the curb with his back against a small tree and snored. Lin Yu stared at the incident on his mobile phone, and soon the incident jumped to 8.34 minutes. Lin Yu's cell phone was very poor and did not have a countdown function. He could only count in his mind. 1.2.3, 31, 32. I was counting in my heart, and chanting out loud in my mouth. Li Ruochen heard Lin Yu counting constantly and asked in confusion, Lin Yu, is this your way of learning? Memorize formulas? Lin Yu didn't answer, and counted each word one by one until he reached 51. As soon as 52 was spoken, a bright light suddenly lit up in front of the three of them. In less than half a second, there was a loud boom, like thunder exploding above the heads of the three people. Immediately afterwards, a shock wave cut through thorns and thorns from a distance, attacking the three of them with a devastating momentum. Just when Li Ruochen's eyes were blinded by the bright light, his ears felt strong pressure, and then there was a loud noise. His whole brain suddenly became empty, without thinking, and he subconsciously held on to Lin Yu tightly. Arm. Lin Yu, who was well prepared, hugged the fat man's neck. At this time, his weight advantage was revealed. Even so, the three people were still overturned by the air wave and rolled on the lawn behind. The place where the three people are located is at least 5 miles away from Sihai Restaurant. This shows the explosive power of Sihai Restaurant. Due to the lack of help, Zhang Hongqi was already very busy, but at this time he received a call saying that his son had been hit by a car. He told his wife that he originally wanted her to support him in the store first, but when his wife heard that her son had been in a car accident, she immediately started crying and wanted to see her son together regardless of life or death. After all, Zhang Shi is their only son. Although they have made a lot of money over the years, if their son is gone, what is the use of having more money? So the two of them drove their Wrangler anxiously towards Lin Yu's location. However, the two of them had only driven out for 10 minutes, and before they had even traveled 2 miles, they heard a loud noise and the street behind them exploded. Before he had time to tell whether his home exploded, his car was overturned by the air wave, and the entire car moved more than 10 meters. After the two climbed out of the car, they finally recognized from the location of the fire that their Sihai restaurant had exploded. After the explosion, a fire broke out, and thick smoke rushed hundreds of meters into the sky. The entire Xiangqing street was like a purgatory on earth. The excavator and some workers who were still working outside were seriously injured by falling objects after the explosion. Zhang Hongqi looked at the restaurant that he had worked hard for more than 10 years with a face full of astonishment. His whole body was shaking and his mind was blank. After Zhang Hongqi's wife saw that her restaurant was bombed, she fainted without breathing. Zhang Shi was startled awake by the explosion, and the three of them quickly stood up from the grass, walked to a high place, and looked into the distance. Seeing that his restaurant exploded, Zhang Shi was frightened into a cold sweat no matter how worried he was. He turned to Lin Yu and said, "Lin Yu, was it you?" Lin Yu was stunned. He didn't expect Fatty's brain circuit to be so magical. "It must be you. You asked me to call my parents yesterday and asked them to cancel all the banquets today. Then there was an explosion today. If you didn't do it, who else could have done it?" The fat man's eyes were red. He grabbed Lin Yu's collar and cried, "I still bring you breakfast every day and find you work. Is this how you treat me?" When Li Ruochen saw the crazy fat man, he stepped forward and grabbed the fat man's hand, trying to pry away the fat man's hand from Lin Yu's collar, while saying, "Zhang Shi, you are crazy, what are you talking about? How much explosives are needed for an explosion of this level to produce such an effect? Lin Yu is still a student, where can he get the explosives?" Lin Yu patted Zhang Shi's hand and said calmly, "Fat man, since I did it, why should I let your parents cancel the banquet? Since I did it, why should I save your parents?" After Zhang Shi heard Lin Yu's words, he was slightly stunned, but still didn't believe it. "Then how did you know that my restaurant will explode? You must have an accomplice?" Although he said this, his tone softened obviously and his hands slowly relaxed. If it were someone else, he would definitely believe that the other person did this. But he was facing Lin Yu. Zhang Shi couldn't understand who Lin Yu was. Lin Yu didn't want to quarrel with Zhang Shi, so he found a stone pillar to sit on the edge, picked up his phone, and entered Xianqi's Weibo. Xuanzai's Weibo account was not blocked, only that one message was blocked. At this time, Xuanji's Weibo is still peaceful. I believe that before long, this Weibo will be watched by countless people, and it may set a new record for Weibo comments. Turning off his phone, Lin Yu closed his eyes and began to recall the Weibo post by Xianchai in his mind. Lin Yu's memory is super strong, almost to the point of photographic memory. It hasn't been that long since Weibo was blocked, so Lin Yu can basically recall everything on Weibo. Lin Yu broke into a cold sweat at this memory. There was no red flag in the list of 45 people who died. Among the 328 people injured, there were no red flags. In other words, Xuanji had expected that he would call Zhang Hongqi and call out Zhang Hongqi and his wife. What kind of magical power is this? I have relived my life, and I don't know as much as Xuanzai. Is this still my sick master? That doctor who was sick and feared that he would not have enough money to see a doctor, so he took out the needles and sneaked away. I originally thought that my master was just a useless monk who helped others build a dojo and made a little money. Unexpectedly, after just a little digging, I dug out a giant dragon. So here comes the question, since Xuanzai is so powerful, why should he pretend to be an ordinary person and be laughed at or even bullied? Lin Yu analyzed it and found that there were only two reasons. The first reason is, Xuanzai will pay a huge price for using this ability. Considering Xuanji's physical condition and going to the hospital every now and then, the cost should be Xuanji's life. Therefore, Xianqi did not dare to use this magical power unless absolutely necessary. There is another reason. Xianqi has a very powerful enemy. He hides in Dinghui Temple and remains anonymous in order to avoid this enemy. Once he uses this ability, his enemies will know about it, which will lead to death. Combining Xuanji with the first of the three sentences, he said, "This world is equal and a world of exchange." It is almost certain that the reason why Xuanzai has never used this ability is because once it is used, it requires an overdraft of life. Lin Yu couldn't help but clenched his fists. The regret in his heart was like a needle prick, making him breathless. Xianqi risked his life for himself and for him and Jiuming Jiuhui to live a good life. I obviously have many ways to make money. I am obviously the eldest son of the family, and should be responsible for the family, but I still choose a desperate way to make money. If your home is gone, what's the use of all this money? Thinking of this, Lin Yu shed tears and dialed Xianqi's cell phone with trembling hands. Feeling Lin Yu's sadness, Li Ruochen was at a loss and could only hold Lin Yu's hand tightly while leaning against Lin Yu. Zhang Shi stared blankly at his burning home in the distance, and trembled with his lips as he muttered, "It's over, everything is over. From now on, there will be no buns to eat, no pig's trotters to chew, and no new clothes to wear." As soon as the call was connected, he heard a violent cough on the other end, followed by the sound of spitting. Lin Yu could even close his eyes and think that Xuanji was vomiting blood. Xuanji, who had not vomited blood for 3 years, vomited blood again. Lin Yu was so choked that he couldn't speak. Xianqi on the opposite side finally calmed down and asked, Do you have enough money? You are disobedient and hide the money at home." Lin Yu couldn't control himself anymore, cried out and shouted, "Dad, I miss you." The person on the other side was obviously stunned, because since they were young, Xianqi would not let the three of them call him Dad, even though he was actually both a father and a mother, raising the three of them. "I didn't expect to cause you such harm. Dad, I will go back in a few days and take you to the hospital. You must listen to me and get good treatment this time, okay?" After Xuanji was silent for a few seconds, he understood that Lin Yu knew his secret. He smiled calmly and said, "You are an old man, why do you still spend this money? It's okay, cough, I'm fine, don't worry, I won't die. Dad only has this ability. He has never been able to let you live a good life before. Now that you have this opportunity, just use it. I have put the money on your card. You are about to take the college entrance examination. Remember to buy something good to supplement yourself." Lin Yu's card had been out of money for a long time, and the information about the balance changes had been blocked long ago, so he didn't even know that Xianqi had transferred money to him. Lin Yu took a deep breath and said, "Master, I order you, starting from today, don't use this ability once. If you use it again, I will drop out of school immediately, and go home to become a monk." Xuanji smiled and comforted. "It's not as serious as you think. In fact, I've used it several times before, and it's still alive and well, right? If you dare to drop out of school, see if I don't spank you. It's embarrassing enough for me to be a monk, but can I let you follow my old path? Don't think too much, I'm really fine, cough. The person on the other side started coughing violently again. Just when Lin Yu was about to hang up the phone, Xianqi regained his composure and said quietly, You are the hope of our family. As long as you are here, I will never die. So you must be good." Lin Yu nodded and said, "You must be well too. We can't live without you." After Lin Yu hung up the phone, He sat blankly on the stone pier, suddenly losing his energy. Li Ruochen had already listened roughly to Lin Yu's cell phone. The reason why Lin Yu could predict that Zhang Xi's house would explode was because he had an expert master. And Lin Yu called the master daddy, indicating that the master had a nurturing relationship with Lin Yu. Otherwise, with Lin Yu's character, how could he possibly be able to say the word Dad? And how could he say it so affectionately? So, who are the two noble-looking people who claimed to be his sisters just now? Lin Yu was fostered in his master's home since he was a child? A family like the Lin family, which can afford to open a Cullinan, cannot afford to raise a son? What's more, rich families treat their heirs, especially boys, as if their treasures are their own lifeblood. Why are they willing to foster them outside and keep them for more than 10 years? Look at his sister, and then look at Lin Yu. Apart from their similar looks, how else do they look like siblings? Thinking of this, Li Ruochen raised his head and asked curiously, Lin Yu? Are you sure you and the two ladies just now are brother and sister? After Lin Yu put down his phone, his mood still hadn't calmed down, and he said angrily, They said I am? They have done DNA tests several times, and they all say I am their child. Who the hell wants to be their child? I originally had a father, younger brothers and sisters, and the family was living a good life, but they had to interfere. Li Ruochen said in confusion, Since DNA proves that you are their child, they should treasure you. Why do you let you live like this? Lin Yu smiled bitterly and said, You think I'm not good enough for them, you think I'm a wild child from the countryside. Lin Yu didn't want to dwell on this issue anymore, so he turned to Zhang Xi and said, Please contact your parents quickly. They thought your leg was crushed. My hotel is gone, and my son is gone. I doubt they can withstand this blow. Zhang Xi woke up from his dazed state after being slapped by Lin Yu, quickly took out his cell phone and called Zhang Hongqi. The phone rang twice and I answered it. Zhang Hongqi's trembling voice came from the other side. Son, where are you? Don't be afraid. Dad will be here soon. Zhang Xi quickly said, Dad, I'm fine. My classmate asked me to call you just now to lie to you. Our hotel has been bombed. How will we survive in the future? Zhang Hongqi, who was opposite him, was obviously taken aback and said in confusion, You, my classmate, are you joking about this kind of thing? Zhang Xi said naively, If he didn't joke about this kind of thing, you would all be killed by the bomb now. There was silence on the other side. Then he asked softly, Did he know that our house would explode? Lin Shiyan and Lin Xingnan didn't go far either. This powerful explosion almost overturned their car. Lin Xingnan, who heard the explosion, immediately realized that something serious had happened. After the car stabilized, he instantly returned to his resolute nature as a soldier and said to Lin Shiyan, Second sister, it seems to be Xiangqing Street. Let's go and have a look. At the same time, he took out his mobile phone and dialed 119 first, then 120, and then called his boss. Lin Xingnan had just joined the job not long ago, and the branch leader didn't remember her very much. After hearing her call, he immediately knew that the matter was serious. Of course, he also heard the violent explosion. The branch director immediately called the city. The city leaders did not dare to neglect. Some people were still at the wine table. They were also urgently recalled to the city government, and then emergency arrangements were made to go to Xiangqing Street to control the scene. The first ones to arrive at the scene were Lin Xingnan and Lin Shiyan. After all, they were not far from the scene. The two people who rushed to the scene were immediately stunned by the tragedy in front of them. The entire Sihai restaurant has a total of 12 floors, and now the 3rd to 7th floors have been penetrated, and the whole building is on the verge of collapse. Glass, billboards, twisted aluminum windows, cement blocks, etc. fell all over the ground. Several construction workers who were doing night work were hit hard and fell to the ground convulsing, more dead than alive. 7 or 8 construction vehicles were scattered around, crooked and scattered on the ground. There were cries and screams upstairs, and blood and some human tissue on the roof flowed down along the broken walls. Lin Shiyan had never seen such a scene before, and she bent over and vomited wildly. Lin Xingnan had no reaction. She sniffed her nose and found a strong smell of natural gas. An explosion of this level is either a terrorist attack or an explosion of explosives. Either the natural gas main pipe was damaged, causing a leak and explosion. 1 or 2 gas tanks simply cannot achieve this effect. Lin Xingnan saw the words, Dingqing Construction, written on the construction vehicle at the scene. The word, Ding City, looked familiar to Lin Xingnan, as if he had seen or heard of it somewhere. If something like this happens, the higher authorities must analyze the cause of the accident and ultimately hold them responsible. The leaders in charge of this area cannot escape the blame. Lin Xingnan is a soldier and is calm in times of trouble. At the same time, he is a child of a wealthy family and has been used to all kinds of intrigues in the business world since he was a child. There is absolutely reason to believe that after this incident, there will be various blame shifting and multiple scapegoats. Looking for scapegoats in the industry generally follows the rule of bullying. High-level leaders look for subordinates, low-level leaders look for grassroots leaders, and grassroots leaders look for petty people. Such a big event, with hundreds of casualties, is likely to alarm the province and even the central government. Who is the right person to take the blame? Naturally, he is the person directly responsible. There is no doubt that the person directly responsible is Dingqing Construction, and it was their irregular construction that caused the natural gas pipeline to leak. Only then did Lin Xingnan remember that Lin Shiyan had told her that this Ding City seemed to be the real estate giant that the Lin family had cooperated with before. That cooperation was disrupted by Lin Yu by exposing insider trading and non-compliance with the agreement. How could such a giant be captured without any help? The compensation at this level must be over 100 million. Then, Dingqing will definitely find someone who can take the blame for itself. Who is best suited to take the blame? Dead? Although Lin Xingnan only worked at the branch for 1 day, he was already fully involved in the work of criminal investigation. She keenly felt that this matter would become a battlefield for all parties. It is very likely that the person who died in the accident will eventually be found to take the blame. Among these dead people, those who attend banquets or hold weddings must not be allowed. Then the only person who can take the lead is the owner of Sihai Restaurant. The owner of Sihai Restaurant is simply the chosen one to take the blame for this matter. He has wealth but no background. I have some money, but not much, and there are no big names or powerful people behind me. Obviously, with an explosion of this magnitude, the boss should have been killed in the restaurant. A dead person can't plead his case, let alone petition and give eye drops to the leader. Lin Xingnan, who regards fairness as his life, will never let these people succeed. Lin Xingnan took out his mobile phone, opened the video, and quickly recorded the situation at the scene. It was obvious that the natural gas pipe supervisor had been pulled out of the ground by the bucket of the excavator. It can be seen that the terminal of the natural gas pipeline has been seriously ruptured. Most of the people at the scene were screaming, and some were trying to save people. Lin Xingnan knew that saving people at this time was almost like killing people. How can we save someone without professional tools or a medical team? Following the extracted pipeline, Lin Xingnan extended upwards and finally found the crack in the natural gas pipeline. There are 7 or 8 cracks, the widest one is 7 or 8 centimeters, and the smaller ones are 1 or 2 centimeters. This shows the amount of natural gas leaking out and what level it is. The scary thing is that the natural gas at the site is still leaking out. Once it reaches the explosion critical point, a second explosion will occur immediately. The Sihai Restaurant will definitely be razed to the ground by then. After Lin Xingnan collected the evidence, he immediately called the natural gas company. The office staff of the natural gas company had a blunt attitude. Why do you say that this explosion was a natural gas leak from our company? We have the right to hold you accountable for defamation. Lin Xingnan was so angry that he wanted to slap the staff member on the phone. In desperation, Lin Xingnan revealed his identity, and the other party reluctantly agreed to ask for instructions from the leader. After a long time, the other party called back and said that the leader had gone to attend the wedding of a female subordinate. The wedding was held at Sihai Restaurant. Well, the causal loop, the evidence has finally closed. After some hard work, the staff member agreed to ask higher-level leaders for instructions and agreed to turn off all gas in this area. Lin Shiyuan finally stopped vomiting and suffered from an occupational disease. Such a large accident scene will develop into a large-scale claim site in the future. Now he is standing at the forefront of the accident and has to collect evidence quickly. She and Lin Xingnan took different paths to obtain evidence. Lawyer! The main thing is to win the lawsuit. She will find evidence in favor of whoever pays more. As for truth and justice, in the face of money, they are just tools. Lin Xingnan is a pure love warrior. Fairness and justice are her professional beliefs and cannot be blasphemed. Lin Shiyuan also took a video of the gas pipeline being damaged, but she had already started building in her mind. If Dingqing Group came to ask her to file this lawsuit, how could she keep this fact out of the question, or even say it was the defendant's responsibility? Then he went upstairs again, raised his mobile phone, and recorded the tragic scenes one by one. She saw a little girl with her feet buried under a concrete pillar, and the little girl's mother had been crushed to death. The little girl cried and reached out to touch her mother's face. She saw a father who was already dead, but the father used his not-so-forgiving body to fight for a sliver of life for his 1 or 2-year-old son. She saw a couple. The girl seemed to be a bridesmaid. When the rocks fell, the boy used his body to protect the girl. The girl lived and the boy died. The girl let out a heartbreaking cry and pulled the rocks hard with her hands. 5 fingers dripping with blood. If these people hire themselves as lawyers, then these videos and photos will become atomic bombs in court, enough to crush all the other parties' attempts. Lin Xingnan also followed him upstairs and also recorded the tragic situation upstairs with his mobile phone. 20 minutes later, the first person to arrive at the scene turned out to be a radio signal shielding vehicle. Seeing the radio signal shielding car approaching from a distance, Lin Xingnan's professional sensitivity reminded himself of what would happen next. Obviously, some people don't want the right to speak to fall into the hands of the weak. Lin Xingnan immediately sent the video message on his mobile phone to the branch chief Ma Hao. After thinking about it, I still felt unsafe, so I sent this information to Xiao Zhao. Xiao Zhao's name is Zhao Qing. As his name suggests, he has a strong sense of justice. Moreover, this person has a deep background in Kyoto and the provincial capital. He seems to be an out-and-out 4th-generation red man. Zhao Jing and Lin Xingnan have faced crises together and are people who can give each other's back. After doing this, the radio signal shielding vehicle has arrived downstairs and turned on the radio shielding. Lin Xingnan's cell phone immediately became no signal. There were also people alive at the scene, all with beards and tails, and some were taking videos, but the signal suddenly disappeared. Following closely behind the radio signal shielding vehicle was a group of burly men in black suits. These men did not hold any rescue tools, but baseball bats. The leading man has a crew cut, a mustache, and the muscles on his body show an explosive force, and the violence can be felt in all kinds of black suits. Mustache and his men first drove away the people around him, then looked at the damaged natural gas pipeline under the excavator, dragged the driver of the excavator out of the car, and beat and kicked him. This is not over yet. Lin Xingnan looked at the mustache, picked up a stone from the ground, and hit the driver on the head. This is killing people in full view of the public. How can this be tolerated? At this time, Lin Xingnan was upstairs and could not stop him. He could only shout at Mustache. "Who are you? I tell you, I am a policeman. If you dare to hit that person, I will definitely bring you to justice." Mustache glanced at Lin Xingnan upstairs indifferently, and then used violence, smashing the driver who was still twitching to death in a few blows. Lin Xingnan was furious. These people were simply lawless. Just as he was about to go downstairs to arrest someone, Lin Shiyuan grabbed Lin Xingnan's arm, shook his head and said, "There are many of them. You will suffer a loss if you go down. It's better to wait until the police arrive." "What are you talking about?" "I am the police," Lin Xingnan said, dissatisfied. "I just watched them kill witnesses." After saying that, he quickly went downstairs. After Mustache killed one person, he still didn't give up. He called the construction team leader and yelled at him. The captain of the construction team was in his 30s, and he seemed to be strong and powerful. He also had scars on his face, and it was obvious at first glance that he was not a good person. But in front of Mustache, he just said something back, and was knocked down by Mustache with a punch, and then hit his head with the same method. By the time Lin Xingnan went downstairs, Mustache had already smashed Scarface to death. Mustache clearly saw Lin Xingnan coming towards him, and warned him repeatedly. He turned a blind eye and smashed the construction team leader to death. Lin Xingnan was so angry that he pointed at his mustache and said, "You are suspected of murder and I want to arrest you." Mustache glanced at Lin Xingnan with disdain and said disdainfully, "Girl, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. This is an internal matter within our Dingqing group and has nothing to do with you." Lin Xingnan angrily asked, "Is your Dingqing group a lawless place? Can you deprive them of their lives at will?" After saying that, he was about to go forward and arrest the person. The man with the mustache took a step back and asked, "Which branch are you from? I tell you, even the leaders of the municipal bureau have to give our boss some face when they see him. I advise you to think about it carefully. It's not easy to pass the police examination. Don't lose your career." Lin Xingnan is a military man, and what he hates most are all kinds of threats. Lin Xingnan didn't say anything and started to capture people. Seeing that his threat was ineffective, the man with a mustache waved to his men, and 40 or 50 thugs behind him immediately surrounded Lin Xingnan. Lin Shiyan, who was following closely behind Lin Xingnan, was so frightened that his face turned pale. He shouted, "We are from the Lin group. Mr. Gu from your Dingqing is friends with my father Lin Yuan." The mustache man glanced at Lin Shiyan and said disdainfully, "Lin Yuan is nothing. If you say anything more, I'll get rid of you too." Lin Shiyan was used to being high and mighty, being praised wherever she went. She had never suffered any injustice in her life. She was the kind of rich kid who had never known the taste of sorrow. This was the first time she saw someone not buying into her or even Lin Yuan. It turns out that the Lin family is not omnipotent, and some people simply don't buy into the Lin family's ideas. Lin Shiyan was a little at a loss. Seeing his sister being surrounded and beaten by many men, he still wanted to save Lin Xingnan. Lin Shiyan took out his cell phone, pointed it at the mustache, and threatened, "I'm telling you, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to film your violent behavior right now, and I'm going to sue you to death." The mustache sneered and said, "Sure. If you have the ability to take the phone out of this scene today, I will take your surname." After that, he said to his 2 men, "Go and grab that woman's cell phone." The 2 big men nodded and walked quickly towards Lin Shiyan. Lin Shiyan is only arrogant at home, standing on the moral high ground and bullying Lin Yu. He is a typical bully at home, and has never seen such a scene before. Lin Xingnan, who was still fighting, saw the man with the mustache trying to touch Lin Shiyan, and shouted in the crowd, "If you dare to touch my sister, I will never let you go." The 2 men ignored Lin Xingnan's threats, snatched the phone from the frightened Lin Shiyan, and handed it to the man with a mustache. The mustache man took the phone and looked at Lin Shiyan with a provocative look. Then, in front of Lin Shiyan, he threw the phone hard and stepped on it several times. The phone was broken into pieces under the mustache man's feet. Lin Xingnan, who was surrounded, showed her prowess and knocked down 7 or 8 thugs in 2 minutes. However, there were too many thugs and they were all armed. Soon, she was hit on the shoulder by a stick and staggered. Almost fell. At this time, Lin Yu and Zhang Xi, who were not far away, finally waited for Zhang Hongqi and Zhang Xi's mother to arrive. The family of 3 hugged each other and cried bitterly. After she finished crying, Zhang Xi's mother remembered that Zhang Xi's legs were broken. She quickly pulled Zhang Xi to stand up and squeezed him anxiously. She was both relieved and nervous about the bombing of her restaurant. Lin Yu saw the family of 3 reunited, pulled Li Ruochen and was about to leave. Seeing that Lin Yu was about to leave, Zhang Xi quickly broke away from her mother's embrace, stepped forward and grabbed Lin Yu and said, "Lin Yu, I know you are not an ordinary person. You must have a way, right? Help my family, okay? As long as you can help our family get through this difficult time, I will give you 30% of the shares of Sihai Restaurant. No, 50%. If that doesn't work, you can take the majority. The fat man is not useless, he still knows some business skills. Zhang Hongqi saw her son begging for a thin boy and asked in confusion, "Who is this?" Zhang Xi's face was still swollen. He looked at his father and introduced him. "He is my classmate and desk mate. He also worked in our restaurant." "You have no memory?" Only then did Zhang Hongqi recognize the boy in front of him. No wonder Zhang Hongqi didn't recognize Lin Yu. In fact, Lin Yu was also beaten to a bruised nose and swollen face. There were several lumps the size of fried buns on his head, and the blood on half of his face was not dry yet. "Woolen cloth." Lin Yu stopped, glanced at Zhang Hongqi and said, "Now, don't think about compensation or not. It's good that you are alive. I can only save you from this disaster. As for your future life and death, I can't do anything." When Zhang Xi heard this, he became anxious, knelt down in front of Lin Yu with a bang, and said with snot and tears, "Lin Yu, I have been at the same table with you for more than 2 years. I know that you have a good brain, so you must save him. Save our family." Lin Yu was stunned, and quickly reached out to pull Zhang Xi. He pulled several times, but he didn't pull. Zhang Xi was determined to kneel down, but Lin Yu in his normal state couldn't pull him back at all. "You get up first. Isn't it embarrassing for a grown man to kneel down all the time?" Lin Yu said. "There is a way, but I don't know if you are willing to do it." "You said I will listen to you. I will definitely listen to you," Zhang Xi said quickly. Lin Yu glanced at Zhang Hongqi. Zhang Hongqi, who was in a mess, saw his son begging his classmates inexplicably. He wanted to give his son some face, so he nodded and said, "You say it. You go to the Public Security Bureau now and surrender. Now, the only one who can save your life is the Public Security Bureau." Lin Yu continued, "This matter is no longer something that any one person or force can control. You are the person directly responsible for the accident. Although the accident was not caused by you, no matter who caused it, the blame will fall on your heads. Whether you want it or not, you will be the last one to take the blame. A dead scapegoat is hundreds of times better than a living scapegoat. Whether you are willing to surrender or not is up to you." Lin Yu's words immediately gave Zhang Hongqi the feeling that there are always unscrupulous people who want to harm me. His life was at stake. Zhang Hongqi was so frightened that he sweated profusely and said hurriedly, "Classmate Lin's analysis is right. I will go to the east of the city right away." The branch surrendered. After saying that, he picked up his wife and got into the car. Before leaving, he took a look at his son. After leaving, he didn't know when he would be able to come back. Now Sihai Restaurant has exploded. Although there are many branches of Sihai Restaurant in other places, they are all joint ventures. Yes, it belongs to joining your own brand, and you only have about 40% of the shares. As for his son, he knows almost nothing except eating. Despite his tall and thick appearance, he is actually only 17 years old. How will this son live now that he is gone? Thinking of this, Zhang Hongqi couldn't help but shed tears and choked up. "Son, Dad is sorry for you. Over the years, we have only cared about making money and cared too little about you. I will put 5 million into your card later. You find a place to hide and wait until we come out. After all, they are his parents. Even if they usually care too little about him, compared with Lin Yu, Zhang Xi feels that he is still very happy." Seeing his father crying, Zhang Xi also burst into tears and said to Zhang Hongqi and his mother, "Dad, Mom, don't worry about me. I have Lin Yu and everything will be fine. I will hide in the school and no one will come to trouble me." Then, he turned to look at Lin Yu, showed his cautious side and asked, "You think so, Lin Yu?" Hearing this question that smacked of moral kidnapping, Lin Yu immediately thought of his boss in the Lin family. "Brother, I think you won't go to your parents to report me, right? Lin Yu, I think you won't argue with Tianyang, right? Lin Yu, you are a boy. If you feel wrong now, you won't care about it, right?" All these countless bad memories came to mind. Lin Yu's face was livid. Under this combination, he slowly became a humble licking dog. Just because I saved you doesn't mean that I owe you. Seeing Lin Yu's ugly face, Zhang Xi's small eyes made a naughty wink at Lin Yu, and said with lips, "You 3i7. Lin Yu understood that Zhang Xi wanted to use 30% of the 5 million his father gave him in exchange for his protection. Who says fat people are not smart anymore? 30% of 5 million is 1.5 million. With this money, you can do a lot of things. However, Lin Yu doesn't like being kidnapped by others, nor does he like kidnapping others." Lin Yu nodded and said, "Uncle, don't worry. Zhang Xi is fine in school. There is no need to hide. This is a school after all. Those dark forces, no matter how brave they are still a little scrupulous about rushing into the school to arrest people." Zhang Hongqi nodded, got in the car, reluctantly waved to Lin Yu, and the car slowly drove away. 2 minutes later, Zhang Xi's cell phone rang with a voice. "Alipay has received 5 million yuan. The fat man, who was still sad at first, immediately smiled. He patted Lin Yu on the shoulder and laughed loudly. "This is giving me 100 years of pocket money. It's cool. Come on, I'll give you 1.5 million. Suddenly he saw Li Ruochen next to Lin Yu. He didn't know that Li Ruochen was sold by her father for 3 million. He saw Li Ruochen with an envious look on his face and said with a smile, "Ruochen, if nothing else happens, you will be Lin Yu's wife and my sister-in-law in the future. If you meet me, I will give you 100,000 yuan. Come, I will sweep it. You." Seeing that Zhang Xi was like a boy who gave away money to everyone, Lin Yu stopped him and said, "If nothing happens, your family's lawsuit will last for a long time. Before that, all your family's accounts will be blocked. At that time, I didn't even have the money to hire a lawyer. You should keep this money for yourself." Li Ruochen heard the fat man say that he would be Lin Yu's wife in the future, and his heart beat wildly. He secretly looked at Lin Yu's side face. Under the neon light, this scarred face looked so perfect. This is nothing, just based on Lin Yu's ability to handle these things just now. She couldn't figure it out anyway. Such an outstanding boy was nothing in the eyes of his 2 sisters. What kind of weird family is this? Lin Yu's words were like a basin of cold water poured on the head of Zhang Xi, who was in high spirits. Zhang Xi's outstretched hand was neither sweeping nor sweeping. Lin Yu continued, "I don't want your money. I will figure out how to deal with money myself. If you keep this money well, there will be more places to use it in the future." Zhang Xi took back his phone angrily, looked at Lin Yu with pleading eyes and said, "Lin Yu, I still want to go home and have a look. After all, I have lived there for more than 10 years. Zhang Xi's family lives on the top floor of Sihai Restaurant. The entire first floor is their family's living area, which is about more than 1,000 square meters. It is no smaller than Lin Yu's villa. However, it is a commercial area, not a residential area." The fat man was still cautious. He wanted to go back and see how big the trouble was at home, and whether he could still go back. Lin Yu naturally knew what Fatty was thinking. He looked at the time and saw that it was almost 9 o'clock, so it didn't matter if he went there. Lin Yu nodded and said, "We can only take a look from a distance and leave. No matter how precious your things are, you can't get them. If you listen to me, I will accompany you. If you don't listen, we will just leave. Part ways." Zhang Xi nodded and said, "I listen to you. There are still more than 5 miles away from Xiangqing Street. If you walk there, it will take a long time. Lin Yu doesn't want to waste the whole night on these messy things. After all, he will face Minghu of the Fox Way tomorrow. You have to think carefully about how to negotiate with Minghu." Zhang Xi didn't want to leave either. He was a big fat man, weighing more than 200 pounds. He usually walked a little faster and was out of breath. It would kill him to let him walk so far. So, the 3 of them called an online taxi. A few minutes later, Lin Yu saw the radio signal shielding car in the distance, and he immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. Looking again, I saw Lin Xingnan surrounded by countless men in black. In this situation, even if Lin Xingnan was the king of soldiers, he couldn't withstand it. He saw Lin Xingnan being knocked to the ground, rolling on the ground to dodge. looking for opportunities to fight back. It is estimated that in less than 2 minutes, Lin Xingnan will lose the ability to fight back, and his final fate can be imagined. Standing beside him was Lin Shiyan, who was shouting. A man with a mustache who looked like a gangster leader thought Lin Shiyan's shouting was annoying, so he ordered 4 or 5 of his men to surround Lin Shiyan. Lin Shiyan usually loves beauty, but this is only April, and she is already wearing a hip-covering short skirt with bare legs. A pair of white legs, thin and long. How could those 4 men miss the opportunity to take advantage of Lin Shiyan? While holding Lin Shiyan down, they moved their hands up and down Lin Shiyan, even his shirt was torn. A pair of high-heeled shoes worth tens of thousands of dollars, one was broken, and the other was missing. The fleshy feet stepped on the broken glass, and the white and tender soles were dripping with blood. Lin Yu, who was in the online car-hailing car, looked livid. When the online ride-hailing driver saw the group of people in front of him, he felt uneasy and did not dare to drive any further. He kept urging Lin Yu and others to get out of the car. Li Ruochen on the side saw the humiliated Lin Shiyan and said in surprise, "Lin Yu, that person seems to be your sister." After finishing speaking, he turned around and saw Lin Yu with an ugly look on his face. He immediately changed his words and said, "I made a mistake. They were just 2 passers-by. There are so many of them, so let's go." A year ago, Lin Yu would have risked his own life to save his 2 sisters. Especially this 4th sister, Lin Yu, who usually worships heroes, respects her very much. But now, he has been kicked out by the Lin family. It has nothing to do with the Lin family. The life and death of Lin Shiyan and Lin Xingnan has everything to do with him. "Reverse," Lin Yu said to the online ride-hailing driver with a frosty face. The online taxi driver saw Lin Yu with a cold face in the rearview mirror and wanted to increase the price. However, seeing the evil look in Lin Yu's eyes, he immediately gave up the idea and hurriedly reversed the car. Lin Yu looked at the signal on his mobile phone while instructing the online car-hailing driver until after driving a distance of 500 or 600 meters, his mobile phone had 2 bars of signal. "Stop!" Lin Yu opened the contacts and found Tang Sen's contact number. Didn't he show off that if something happened to him, he could use his name? With the opportunity now available, I want to see if he is bragging or if he really has something. Lin Yu still wanted to go through Tang Sen to see the strength of Foxway, so as to make some preparations for tomorrow's negotiations. The phone rang twice and was answered, but the sound was intermittent. Although it had been more than a mile away, the phone was still affected by the signal-blocking car. Lin Yu said a few words. "I was beaten at number 28 Xiangqing Street, Sihai Restaurant, where the explosion just occurred. If you can come, come. Bring a few more people. If you can't come, forget it." After saying that, he hung up the phone. After contacting Tang Sen, Lin Yu sent another message to Lin Tianyang. "Master Lin, your 2nd sister and 4th sister are being bullied. Come and save your sister quickly. Address, Sihai Restaurant, number 28 Xiangqing Street." Lin Yu put down the phone and said to the online driver, "Drive forward." The online ride-hailing driver was stunned. Lin Yu said coldly, "Add 100. It's not about money." The online ride-hailing driver was still a little scared. 1,000. "Okay, bosses, take a seat." The online ride-hailing driver started the car. Lin Yu turned to Li Ruochen and said, "Ruochen, did you recognize that mustache just now?" Li Ruochen shook his head in confusion. "I recognize him. He's the bastard who bullied you the day before yesterday. He can bully me, but he can't bully you. I want to talk to him about it." Li Ruochen. "But I don't know." Just as Li Ruochen was mid-sentence, he caught a glimpse of Lin Yu, whose face was ashen, and quickly changed his words. "Yes, it's that mustache, and he even touched my breasts. Beast!" As a result, Mustache was immediately labeled as a pervert, a bully, and a bully. Zhang Xu was frightened when he saw a group of men in suits beating women. When he heard that Lin Yu not only did not run away, but wanted to find trouble, he immediately advised. "Lin Yu, look at your 2 sisters, they drive cars worth tens of millions, and the clothes they wear cost hundreds of thousands. Look at you again. They are already like this, why do you still want to save them? Let's go. You're not a police officer. You can't control these things. Lin Yu looked into the distance. Lin Xingnan, who had lost the ability to resist, and whose clothes were torn in the fight, and Lin Shiyan, who was yelling, said coldly, "Who said I want to save them? I just can't stand that bully Ruochen. Ruochen is my classmate and the representative of the physics class. She usually takes good care of me. If she bullies my classmate, I must ask her for an explanation." Zhang Shi still wanted to argue, but after seeing the murderous look in Lin Yu's eyes, he immediately shut up and muttered, "How about I go up first and use up some of their energy, and then you go up again?" By this time, the car had already arrived at the scene. The unruly young man with a mustache saw an electric online car-hailing car speeding toward him, raising dust all over the sky. He was slightly startled when he saw a thin young man getting out of the car. Weighing less than 100 kilograms, Lin Yu managed to get out of the giant's aura. When Mustache saw Lin Yu with a look of revenge for killing his father, he quickly searched in his mind. He didn't recognize the boy in front of him. "If I look carefully, I still don't recognize it." When Lin Shiyan saw Lin Yu coming angrily, he immediately stopped shouting and shouted to Lin Yu alone. "Help me, Lin Yu, quickly!" Lin Yu turned to Lin Shiyan and roared, "Shut up, do I know you? I contacted your brother Tianyang, and he will come to save you right away." "What? You contacted Tianyang?" Lin Shiyan looked shocked. "It's very dangerous here, how could you contact Tianyang?" Lin Yu was too lazy to pay attention to this idiot. He turned to Mustache and said, "You! If you dare to bully my classmate, I will fight with you." Mustache, who was still watching the excitement, looked confused. In fact, he knew Lin Shiyan. Lin Xingnan had just transferred from the army, and he didn't recognize him. But he is from the Dingqing group, so there is no need to worry about the Lin family, even if this person is a lawyer. Besides, how many gangsters like lawyers? When he heard Lin Shiyan calling Lin Yu to save him, he couldn't believe his ears. Can the boy in front of her, who is as thin as a shrimp, save her? Isn't this pushing people into a pit of fire? Could this Lin Yu be her enemy? When he heard Lin Yu say that he bullied his classmates, Mustache was simply shocked. He usually touches others, but today someone actually touched him. What a shame. Under normal conditions, Lin Yu's combat strength is approximately equal to that of a rural woman who is about 50 years old, weighs 75 kilograms, and has a history of diabetes and high blood pressure. In front of the 5 big and 3 rough professional thugs, it can almost be ignored. Before Lin Yu could get closer, Mustache knocked Lin Yu down with one punch. With such fighting power, you still want to save people? If you don't have a mirror, don't you have to pee? If you don't urinate and look at yourself, do you have the face of a hero who saves beauty? The expression on the Mustache's face was 1/3 disdain, 1/3 teasing, and 4/3 incomprehension. Lin Yu, who fell to the ground, shook his head. Venus was flying in front of his eyes, but the pain caused by this punch still did not reach the critical point of God's exchange. Lin Yu rolled over and got up, rushing towards Mustache again. It was still a punch, and Lin Yu fell down. Then I sensed it again, but it hasn't reached the critical point yet. Lin Yu got up again and rushed towards Mustache. Another punch followed by a kick. This time, except for Lin Yu falling a little farther, he still didn't feel the critical point. After Mustache saw Lin Yu's venomous eyes, he was left with only incomprehension, disdain, and teasing. Emotionally, this guy is still a weakling who can't be beaten to death. After being knocked down by Mustache 7 or 8 times, Lin Yu finally came to his senses. With Mustache's fighting power, it would be difficult to activate the critical point of his mutation unless he used weapons. But how could Mustache use weapons when facing such a novice? How can we convince the public in the future? If the people's hearts are scattered, it will be difficult to lead the team. Li Ruochen cried when he saw Lin Yu, who was beaten so hard that he fell down continuously. When Lin Shiyan saw Lin Yu being beaten, he shouted from the side, "Lin Yu, don't hit him, come and save me." Lin Yu stood in front of Mustache again. This time he did not pounce again. Instead, he pointed at Lin Shiyan and said to Mustache, "This bitch is so annoying. Boss, how can you be so tolerant? If it were me, I would have knocked her out long ago. You still want to keep the stronghold?" Mustache nodded and said, "Heroes see the same thing." Suddenly I remembered that I actually regarded the boy in front of me as a hero like myself, which felt a little funny. Lin Shiyan saw that Lin Yu not only did not come to save him, but also allowed the underworld to knock him out. He said anxiously, "Lin Yu, how dare you? I am your sister." Lin Yu turned his head and glanced at Lin Shiyan, and said disdainfully, "Sister? Are you worthy?" Although Lin Shiyan was knocked to the ground, he could still feel the situation around him. She struggled to wait until someone from the branch came, but when the person from the branch didn't come, Lin Yu came. "Just come here. It turns out that you are not here to save yourself and Lin Shiyan. It seems that you are here to seek revenge." Sure enough, he made a bunch of bad guys outside. When he saw Lin Yu charging at Mustache again and again and being knocked down again and again, Lin Shiyan felt heartbroken and cursed. "You bastards, if you dare to touch my brother, I will never spare you." This time, Mustache confirmed that the little boy in front of him was actually the younger brother of these two beauties. He didn't know whether they kissed him or not, but he probably shouldn't. One of them just wanted this younger brother to save her, and she would not recognize this younger brother until she was about to be knocked unconscious. There is another person who is a little concerned, but this concern is not as much as caring about how many kittens the female cat at home has given birth to. What kind of siblings are these? After just a few seconds of curiosity, Mustache and Lin Yu reached a consensus first deal with the woman who was talking nonsense. Mustache shouted to his 4 men, "Have you touched her enough, and you haven't killed her yet? If you continue to touch her, she will get pregnant." The words of a gangster are always unpleasant to hear. Lin Shiyan was so angry that she almost lost her temper. She was usually a little princess at home and a strong professional woman who was respected by everyone in the workplace. How could she have ever experienced such humiliation? Women in the greenhouse are always so self-centered. People always have to be beaten by society to know how much they weigh. This breath didn't last long, and was ended by a baseball bat on the back of the head. After seeing Lin Shiyan knocked unconscious, Lin Yu spat out a mouthful of blood, pointed at his mustache, and said with contempt, "You can't do it." In fact, Lin Yu himself didn't know it. It wasn't that Mustache was incompetent, but that his tolerance had increased, and the critical point for activating God's exchange had also increased. After finishing speaking, Lin Yu turned around and rushed into the dense group of thugs. This is a hard-hit area for sticks, and there are always strong warriors who can inflict pain on themselves. When Mustache heard Lin Yu say that he couldn't do it, he looked shocked. I was actually dissed by this weakling in front of me? This was a mouse licking a cat's face, and he didn't know whether to live or die. On the road, he exists like a living king of hell. Someone who even dares to beat the police is being questioned about his force value and shamelessness. Mustache wanted to catch Lin Yu and teach him a lesson, but when he saw Lin Yu rushing into the crowd, Lin Yu, who was very short, was already overwhelmed by the sticks. Mustache, who had nowhere to vent his anger, walked up to Lin Shiyan, kicked the unconscious Lin Shiyan, picked up a mineral water bottle that had not been exploded from the ground, unscrewed the bottle cap, and poured it on Lin Shiyan's face. Lin Shiyan took a deep breath and woke up. From the angle where she fell to the ground, she saw Lin Yu, who was surrounded by countless people in black and struggling. This picture is so familiar and friendly. Lin Shiyan remembered that once, he fought a lawsuit for an opponent with a gangster background and won the lawsuit. On the road, he encountered the revenge of the gangster boss. Although there were not so many people at that time, there were at least 10 or 20 people. After being knocked unconscious, Lin Tianyang appeared, took her hand and ran away, saying to himself, "Second sister, I'm here to save you, don't be afraid, as long as I'm here, no one can hurt you." The moment she was lifted up, she also saw a figure being surrounded and beaten by more than 20 people from society. Just like the figure in front of him now, he is weak but fearless. Later, Lin Shiyan asked Lin Tianyang many times who was the child who protected him and Lin Tianyang from escaping that day. Lin Tianyang said that it was the person he invited and he was a classmate of his who knew martial arts. This scene completely overlaps with the last scene. Lin Shiyan shook his dizzy head, he couldn't believe his eyes, and the deep-rooted impression of Lin Yu in his mind took over again. How could it be Lin Yu? He is so cowardly, he is such a coward that he doesn't dare to raise his eyes when he sees his sisters. He must be dazzled. Mustache patted Lin Shiyan's face with great interest, pointed at Lin Yu who was being made dumplings, and asked, "Is that little brother really your brother?" Inadvertently, Mustache called Lin Yu little brother. Men, especially awesome men, all have the heart to worship the strong. The previous Tang Sun was like that, and so is this Mustache. Subconsciously, he had regarded Lin Yu as someone who could compete with him. Although there was still a long way to go before he could be equal, he should at least face it. When Lin Xingnan saw Lin Yu rushing towards him, he was moved to tears and said silently in his heart, "Lin Yu, my good brother, thank you for coming to save me. We treated you like this, but you ignored the past grudges. You are simply better than that pretentious Lin Tianyang. 100 times. Why haven't you seen Lin Yu's good deeds before? Sister will definitely make it up to you in the future." When Lin Shiyan saw Mustache's vicious face, he was so frightened that he almost lost control. He nodded hurriedly and said, He is my biological brother." The Mustache said with disdain, "It doesn't look like that. You don't deserve it." After saying that, he threatened Lin Shiyan fiercely. "If you yell again, I will plug your mouth with smelly socks." After saying that, he stood up and looked at Lin Yu with meaningful eyes, who was knocked down again and got up again and again. After receiving countless punches, kicks, and 2 headshots with sticks, Lin Yu finally activated God's Exchange, and that familiar feeling immediately returned to him. Super Sensory Activation. Super Recovery Activation. Super Defense Activated. Super Speed Activation. Super Reaction Activation. Super Strength activated. Lin Yu immediately transformed into a hexagonal warrior. Just when Lin Yu was about to show off his power and eliminate all the little Karami in front of him, a convoy of vehicles came roaring in the dark night. There were all black Hummers as far as the eye could see. It was initially estimated that there were no less than 20 of them. Before the leading car stopped, Tang Sun got out of the car. Tang Sun got out of the car, dusted off his clothes, glanced at his mustache and asked, "Where is my little brother?" When Mustache saw the person coming, he was startled and hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Who are you? Among the 4 protectors of the Foxway?" "Yes," Tang Sun said calmly. "Yes, I am the evil Buddha Tang Sr." Mustache immediately changed his expression and stammered, "Brother, I am from Dingchen Group. Mr. Gao asked me to do something." Unexpectedly, Brother Tang has been alarmed. "Our annual dues are not missing a penny. I won't bother you with this matter. When things get better, I will be the host and invite the brothers to the Hidden Garden for tea." Tang Sun didn't even look at his mustache. He touched his watch and said, "I'm drinking tea. We'll talk about it later. I have a little brother who said he was beaten by someone here. I hope you can give me an explanation." Mustache was surprised and said, "Brother Tang, we really haven't seen any of your brothers here. How about you?" Suddenly he thought of Lin Yu and asked in an uncertain tone, "What's the name of your brother? What is it called?" Tang Sun raised his head and thought for a moment, and said, "It seems to be called Lin Yu." Mustache's face instantly turned pale. He quickly walked to the crowd who were still waving sticks, and pulled Lin Yu up who was about to go crazy. The Mustache pulled Lin Yu and walked quickly to Tang Senator. He pointed at Lin Yu and said tremblingly, "Brother Tang, take a look and see if this is your little brother." Tang Sun glanced at Lin Yu and was about to speak when Lin Yu said impatiently, "You gangsters are all so unpunctual? Are you going to wait until I'm beaten to death before you come?" Tang Sun said with a sneer on his face. "Brother Lin said that when you called, I was collecting a debt. Don't worry, I will definitely satisfy you on this matter." The Mustache was shocked. Where did this thin monkey come from? He dared to speak to the evil Buddha in such a tone. There is a reason why the evil Buddha is called the evil Buddha. A person who looks kind on the surface but can cut people to pieces secretly is actually being ordered around by this Lin Yu. In fact, it is very simple to subdue a person, it only takes a simple punch. Evil Buddha immediately judged from the punch Lin Yu gave him that he and Lin Yu were not on the same level at all. Even the entire Foxway is not at Lin Yu's level. It was a level where no one dared to make mistakes. Although there were only a few people at that level, they all became legends. Summarize it in 2 words: close to God. You can't think about it, you can't say it, and you can't offend it. Tang Xin reached out and took a baseball bat handed to him by his subordinates behind him, and said to Mustache, "Which hand hit you?" "Who hit me?" The mustache plopped, and knelt in front of Lin Yu, sweating like rain, and trembling. "The little one has eyes and cannot see the mountains. Please be kind and spare the little one. You can do whatever you want, I have 80. My old mother has a child with a yellow mouth and countless enemies outside. If I am deposed, I will definitely not survive. What will happen to my old mother and my 2-year-old son?"